What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another weekly Ask Me Anything live Q&A show. We're going to try things a little bit differently this week in that we're not going to have the pre-timer. So usually as you guys log on and start watching, there's usually a, 3 or 4 minute timer that counts down and lets you guys know that I'll be live in 3 minutes and 25 seconds, say. But the problem with that is no one wants to see that. So you click in, you see there's a timer, and generally you leave. We see that in the video analytics, in that we see our viewership drop just within a few seconds of coming in. So we're going to try this. We're going to try something a little bit different in that rather than just do a rolling timer, a countdown timer for the first 3 minutes, we're going to just kind of have a pre-show, really, where I'm going to let the video run for a little bit. I'm going to share this out. As you guys come in, let us know who you are and where you're from, and I'll chat with you for a little bit before we roll right into our content. But also, it's going to do a couple other things too. It's kind of give you guys kind of like a behind-the-scenes look at what goes into the show, maybe, and go from there. So we've got some fun ideas. So here in the future, probably I'd say within the next couple months, you'll be seeing a little bit change the look in the studio. So we're likely looking at moving into a different location. And when we do that, the studio is going to be a little bit different. What I'm hoping is we can have like secondary camera shots. So during this pre-show, the pre-show, and rather than running that timer and letting you guys just look at a countdown timer, you'll just kind of have a behind the scenes look. Right now, you just have this camera, which shows, what you guys are used to seeing, the desk and the backdrop and stuff like that. But so I think it'd be neat to have kind of a camera high and, like you see in a lot of the news shots, right? It shows a more broad view, overview of what's going on kind of behind the scenes. But yeah, I figured you guys would like to see this rather than a countdown timer for a little bit. Let's do this. So give me a couple minutes. I'm going to share this out and to some various Facebook groups and then come right back to you. But in the meantime, why don't you let me know who you guys are and where you're from? We'll start putting together a image of where everyone's at. Man, last week, if you guys were with us last week, I think we had the United States pretty well represented. We had, let me think here. We had some Dakotas to the north. We had a California and an Oregon to the west. We had Louisiana and Florida to the south. We had, where was the northeast? New England, maybe, for the northeast. But then we had some Fence fam up in Canada, which was exciting. And a few minutes into the stream, some Fence fam from London commented in. So we had Fence fam from everywhere. And, I love hearing that. So as you guys come in, drop a comment below. Let me know who you are and where you're from. And as we're doing this, I'm going to be sharing this out. So those of you just joining, so rather than doing a countdown timer, a 3 or 4 minute countdown timer, I'm just letting the camera roll. We're just going to go live, and I'm going to share it out for a few minutes. And then once we get the sharing out done and the details correct, then we'll go ahead and start the show. If you guys have any questions you'd like to discuss on today's Ask Me Anything, drop those in the comments below. I've got a few comments already from the community post that we made earlier this week. So we'll be talking about basically, let me click over and see what those were about. One was, so treated pine versus cedar. Well, technically, they didn't specify treated pine, but pine and cedar said, I'd like to hear you discuss the differences between pine and cedar. So we'll certainly get into that. And then there was another question. So Zach actually was here with us last week. And if I remember this correct, the last name pronunciation rather is Speely. Asks about 2x4. So when we're building an all-wood fence, we're with the 2x4 supports, what's the preferred method of attaching those? So we'll be bringing those up, as well as any questions you guys have. Looks like we've got a few folks checking in. What is up, Burl from Stephen City, Virginia? So we got East Coast handled. Brent Mitch, what is up? Oh, I've been using that phone. Yeah, so Brent Mitch sent me a picture of he used the exact same product that we use in our foam video back in the early spring. The Sika product, if you guys remember that, if you've seen the video, did not perform well for us. It's a little cool, it's a little damp, so obviously not ideal conditions, but conditions that we see in the fencing industry fairly often. Anyway, didn't work out for us. Well, Brent shot me over a picture. What was it? Last night before of some. He used the exact same product over there in California for. I believe that was for a signpost, maybe. Brent, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but it worked out really well for him. So, we keep saying this. I need to shoot a follow up video with give Sika another chance, I guess. Although we did 2 different holes, 2 different bags for that, but Sika. Then also, I see you guys in the comments leaving. There's different brands of that expanding foam, so we need to do a follow up video with that. We just haven't found the right project that would allow us to test out a couple, 2 or 3 different post foams. But as soon as we do that, we'll be recording that video. But anyway, so Brent, thank you for sending that picture over. So sorry. He goes on to say when he's setting signposts for the HOA. Good to know. Very good to know, Brent. I appreciate you sending that over. Jason is here from Central Oklahoma. All right, so we have Brent's West Coast. We got Jason right in the middle, and actually Central Oklahoma is actually only a couple hours from me. And then we've got Burl over there in Virginia for East Coast. And then Dylan's here, the Fizz Prince. Hello, Dylan. Dylan's got the Southern United States locked down. So now we're looking for someone in the Northern United States, and we'll have the entire U.S. Handled. I don't know if handled's the right word, but covered maybe. And then we'll see if we have any Canadian fence fam. Haven't heard from any fence fam down south. So maybe we've got some down in Mexico or South America, Central America, somewhere down there. That would be pretty interesting. All right, so we've got. All right, so yeah, Brent was saying that he uses the post foam for signposts. So that's interesting. And signposts would probably be a great case study for it, simply because they don't hold a lot of weight. They don't a sign typically would have some sort of wind load, I guess, but not nearly like a fence would. Yeah, definitely great to know. Thank you, Brent, for sending that over to me. Jason starts us off with a question. Looking at adding more fence jobs to my lawn care business. So he's a full-time teacher. Thank you for your teaching service. I've got 2 little kiddos. One of them's in school. One of them's about to be in school. And you guys, I do not have the patience to deal with children on a daily basis, all day, every day. I mean, I do with my kids, but when they're other people's kids, the patience is a little bit different, I think. But he goes on to ask, is there a cordless nail gun you recommend? There really isn't, Jason. We demoed, gosh, what was it? We demoed one of those. It was a gas powered nail guns. We demoed one of those, but it had okay power as far as driving the nails, but you have to carry a ton of those cartridges if you're wanting to do like a full fence install. They're good for like if you're doing repairs. The gas powered ones would probably be okay if you're only doing a handful of boards or something like that. Like I said, for a repair, they'd be fine. But any sort of production quantity, you'd really be best with an air powered setup. Jack is with us from Washington State. Hello, Jack, and welcome. We've got people, Fence fam, a little bit everywhere. All right, guys, so I'm going to finish sharing this out. So what I was telling everybody in the beginning, for those of you just joining, rather than do like a start clock where you just sit and watch a timer for a few minutes, I went ahead and just started this live, just started up without the timer. I'm going to share this out for a few more minutes here, and then we'll get down to the meat and potatoes for some other questions that had got entered. So while I do that, if you've got questions, drop them in the comments. We'll get to those as we can, and then, yeah, we'll go from there. Also, let me know where you're at. I always like to kind of have a picture in my mind, a map of where everybody's from. All right. So if you guys probably saw us on Facebook. I shared that out a little bit ago. Also, if you guys aren't subscribed, consider hitting that subscribe button. And when you do, be sure to hit the notification bell. That's a huge step because you need to set notifications to all. The basic subscribe preferences as far as notifications are pretty hit or miss. They'll let you know one time out of 4 or 5 or something like that. And they don't let you know every time. So when you hit the subscribe button, be sure to hit the notification bell and turn the notifications to all. That way YouTube lets you know each and every time we have new content available. And if that sounds rehearsed, it's something I say every video. So it can probably come off that way, I guess. Once you say something over and over and over, it gets kind of like rote memory, I guess. All right. So everything looks like it's being shared out. Very cool. All right. So let's get back to the comments here. Let me look. Comments. All right. So we're still pretty well caught up. One question that was asked in the community post. So Zach Spiele, Zach, if you're here, let us know. He was with us last week for a while in the live chat or in the live Ask Me Anything. So it says, "Hey Joe, when doing an all wood fence with 2x4 supports, what is y'all's methods for attaching the supports to the 4x4s? I generally put the 2x4s between the post and then toenail them in place, though I do not prefer the method." Yeah, Zach, I don't either. So when we were doing wood posts and wood rails, typically we would overlap, right? So it's in our area, it's the standard of you just overlap the 2x4s with your posts, cut them, trim to size, and then nail those in. I like that. I really think it gives you better contact to the 2x4 from the 4x4 rather than toenailing, because really you're nailing through a partial piece of that lumber into the 4x4. Whereas when you're overlapping, you're nailing through the entire 2x4 into that 4x4. I just have to think you get more strength out of that than with a toenail. I could be wrong. Absolutely. I mean, we haven't built it toenailing the board, the 2x4s in between the posts. I could be completely off base. But when you're thinking about it, you get more surface area, you get more of the structure of that 2x4 nailing it overlapped. So that's how we do it. I wouldn't prefer that method either. But if that were the standard in my area, I mean, honestly, I probably would think about just being different and overlapping, just because it seems like a more structurally sound fence than putting your 2x4s in between and then toenailing in. The arguments I've seen arguments for either way. The arguments for the toenailing that I've seen are that it's a cleaner look because you don't have that gap between your pickets and the post that 2x4 takes up, 1.5 inches or whatever that is. And I can understand that, but I would think for the actual structural support you get by overlapping those and nailing them, I would much rather do it that way than with toenailing them in. But yeah, I don't know. That's one guy's opinion, right? And that's what I say for the intros to all the videos is, this is just my experience. My experience comes from learning from my dad, who learned from his dad. We've been doing this 65 years now. This is actually our 65th year. But that's my experience. And there's a lot of other experiences out there that are different. So I'm not saying this is the only way or this is the one true way. I'm saying this is how we've done it for a while. It works for us, but someone else out there will tell you different, I'm sure. All right. So Jack says, all right. So he corrected himself. So DeWalt came out with a 20-volt roofing gun. Be interesting if they came out with a sighting gun to try for fencing. Yep. So we have a ton of batteries already. Might be worth a try. I agree, Jack. So we have a ton of DeWalt equipment, but which means we have a ton of batteries. I don't like being the early adopter, especially when it comes to tools we use in production. I don't mind buying one and trying it out, like keeping it on the truck to try sometimes. But if we're talking about you wanting to, Jason was wanting to add more fence jobs to what he's currently doing and kind of ramp up, and he's buying equipment probably on a limited budget. I mean, all budgets are limited. I absolutely understand, but Jason's trying to grow his business, and if I were in his shoes and growing my business, I probably would stick with the tried and true, only because I would hate to see someone go buy, the DeWalt gun now. And to your point, Jack, the DeWalt was a roofing gun instead of a sighting gun. I'd still hate for someone to go buy something, new like that. And you still, even though you've got a bunch of batteries, you still are probably going to buy a couple more and another charger. I'd hate to see you spend that money and then end up going back to the air powered system when you realize, for whatever reason, either the batteries don't last long enough or they're temperamental. We nail in the rain too. So I mean, not downpours, don't get me wrong, but if it's kind of spitting rain or if it's a light drizzle, we'll nail a fence up. There's no reason not to. I mean, you oil the guns one way or the other, right? So, and a lot of times our guys would rather work in the rain. Now, not like I said, not a downpour, but they'd rather work in the rain than say work Saturday to try to get caught up. Where that battery powered gun just probably wouldn't be so much of an option. But Yeah, but if you guys have used one of those, I'd love to hear it. I mean, I'm not saying we'll never do it. I'm just saying I would have to think long and hard, especially if I was in Jason's predicament, not predicament, but his situation in that trying to grow the business and trying to make, the best purchasing decisions that'll be used long term. I'd still go with the air powered. But yeah, thanks, Jack, though. I appreciate that. Yeah, boy, Boo Boo just saying, hey, what is up, Boo Boo? Hey, remind us where you're from. I remember that you're here with us last week, but I haven't got to the point where I remember where everyone was from. Yeah, isn't that right, Jack? If we didn't work in the rain, we wouldn't work. That is absolutely the truth. I mean, just because it's a part of working outside. You work, and this is what we tell all of our new guys, all the apprentice guys that come through, is that are there gonna be nice days? Absolutely. But there's going to be days that aren't nice either. There's going to be hot days and cold days. There's going to be wet days and drought days, really dry days where it stinks to dig holes. But that's the great thing about being outdoors, is you get to experience all the seasons here in the Midwest and everywhere else. I like how people say that. They're like, you know what? I love living in insert your state here because I like experiencing all the seasons. We used to say that all the time about Missouri. We're like, oh yeah, Missouri, we get all 4 seasons. And if you don't like the weather, just wait a couple days, it'll change. And then like the more like you have, the more prevalent the internet has become. We're watching videos of everyone everywhere. I think that's a pretty common saying, no matter what state you're in. The guys and gals over at Tennessee probably say the same thing. If you don't like the weather, just give it a day or two, it'll change. But you're right, Jack. If we didn't work in the rain, we'd probably cut our work days, maybe not in half, but down. We would cut them significantly. We wouldn't get anything done. Mr. Fence, what is up? You're never too late. We're only about 15 minutes into this thing. So, guys, as usual, we'll be doing the Ask Me Anything live from 3 to 5:30. So we're here for 2.5 hours because I understand people have different schedules. People are coming in and going to work, all that sort of thing, are coming home from and going to work. And anyway, we're here for a while. You're never late. Glad to have Mr. Fence here. Yeah. So, Jason, I mean, I understand this absolutely. So guys that are just joining, Jason's he's got I'm just reading the comments up here. So he's got a lawn care business. He's a full-time teacher. So to have that much patience to deal with, other people's kids all day and then go work is something special for sure. But he was asking for equipment advice, starting up. And when you're doing that, I mean, you have to be really smart about your purchasing decisions, right? So not that fence companies that have been around for a while don't have to make smart purchasing decisions, but Jason's in a situation where every purchase counts, and this is equipment that he wants to rely on for, years and years and years to come. So he needs to make the every dollar count for the most it can. So the question was about, all right, Mr. Fitz, I saw your question. So, but Jason's question was about nail guns. And so actually, Mr. Fence, I think you guys are similar to us. So when you're doing wood fence, Jason was asking about cordless or battery powered. Here, let me just get the question. So he's looking for a cordless nail gun. And so my response was that I've tried some of the gas powered nail guns and they might be good for repairs, but as far as production, they really don't. You got to carry a ton of those cartridges around. And then Jack brought up that DeWalt has come out with a battery powered roof gun. Anyway, so we had that chat real quick. So, all right. So, Mr. Fence, this question came up. So Dylan, I think your dad brought up, Fence King brought this up with a picture talking about utility lines and easements. And so really what the conversation was about utility lines, not even whether or not they're in or outside of easements, because easements are important, but when you're talking about utility lines, whether they're inside or outside of an easement, doesn't matter as far as when you're installing a fence, because so he also talks about gas lines. So really what we're talking about is any sort of utility line, buried utility line right where a fence needs to go. I mean, you see these, if you've been in the fencing business for any period of time, you've seen this. And so the picture, I believe it was Dan that put the picture up that showed, and the color they looked red to me. And so colors are always weird when you're taking a picture with a camera, uploading on the internet. Sometimes colors get lost in translation, but they looked red to me. And as far as I know, at least here in our area, Red's Power, dig and these three, and there are three power lines, which means they were all probably feeding different houses. And the fence had to go right down where the lines were going right next to an existing fence. The existing fence had to be removed and replaced. I'll give you guys our rules, right? Our procedures, and they're in line with what I saw Mr. Fence comment earlier today about this. So the lines are never exact; they're never precise. So when you look at the language of the, for us, it's Missouri one call. When you look at Missouri one call stipulations, it is that they are accurate within 2 foot on either side of that line. So they say if you're going to be within 2 foot, hand dig and use precautions. But the thing is, if you're within 2 foot of that line and you dig and you hit that utility, you're responsible for it. No matter what it costs to fix, no matter what, you are responsible for fixing that line and any damages that occur because of that damaged line. So, say, you guys can't see it, but so say this orange cord is our marking. They have on 2 foot on either side of this marking to be accurate. The line isn't necessarily here. The line could be off to one side or the other. I mean, this thing could be 2 foot off of that line, and they would still be accurate. They would still be considered accurate. So really, you have a 4 foot no-go zone of an area where that utility could be in. And if you hit that line, you're liable for it. That's the big kicker here. So our standard response is we don't dig within 2 foot of a line. Well, we don't accept liability or responsibility for digging within 2 foot of a line. Our preference is to move that fence line because we want to move it to an area that we know is safe from utilities. And so really, to Mr. Fence's point, if there's an easement anyway, if you plant that fence, and even if you don't hit the line, if it's on an easement, they have every right to take it down. If they need to rerun that line or if they need to repair that line, they could take the fence down, and then you need to put it back at your cost. So we always prefer to move 2 foot away, outside that 2 foot buffer zone from either side of the utility line. But sometimes that's not an option. Sometimes that's not acceptable to the client. So then we've got a waiver that we have signed that says, that the customer is instructing us to dig within 2 foot of a marked line, knowing that there's a likelihood of damaging that utility. And any damage that occurs, due to this instruction, the liability falls to the customer, more or less. And it's something we had our lawyer draft up, right, to make sure everything is legal in our state of Missouri. Now, this might vary state to state. That's very possible. But for us, it works. Now, and Mr. Fence went on to say earlier today that, that liability waiver, if it went to court and you fought tooth and nail, does it work all the time? Maybe not. But it hits home the point that there's a very real chance we're going to hit a utility here. They put paint on the ground to let us know that there is utility in this area. There's a very real chance you're going to hit it. And if you do, you get the bill for it. So, and when I say you get the bill for it, that I'm generally talking about AT&T telecommunications. Electric, the ready lines are an absolute no-go. Liability or not, liability waiver or not, we're not digging within 2 foot of an electric line just because, you've seen the horror pictures of, and this got brought up in this discussion earlier of, hand diggers welded to metal conduit that this electric line is running into and all sorts of craziness, right? It's not worth the damage it could do to, if you just damage the wire, I mean, that's what the insurance is for. Okay, I understand that argument. But if that hurts a person, like there is no way that I want to talk to the spouse of one of my team members or their kids and try to explain to them, yeah, we knew there was an electric line there, but you know what? We said, just take a pair of hand diggers and just dig really softly, and Tony here, he thought he hit a rock, because we got rocks everywhere. So he got the rock bar out and he went to beat on it. And well, you know what? That was an electric line. And boy, we sure hope he gets better soon. No, there's zero chance I want to have that conversation. There is not a fence so important that I'm willing to bet my team members and my own health and safety on it. If I'm not willing to do it myself, you can bet I'm not going to ask one of my guys and gals to do it. So that's where we stand on it, on electric. If it's telecommunications, we've got a liability waiver. that hits home the point that this is probably going to happen, because also hitting those utility lines is not cheap either. I mean, telecommunications, just like a coax, is probably coax or maybe a teleco, the copper stuff they use, the older stuff. The cheap stuff starts at about $3,000 as far as mobilization, repair, downtime, on and on and on. The bill typically starts at $3,000. You want to get into fiber optic or anything, infrastructure related, it starts at $10,000 and it just goes from there. So, and so then the response is typically, well, that's what I have insurance for. Well, sure. But if you have that attitude and you hit 2 or 3 or 4 of these things in a year, you might not have insurance, or the insurance next year is going to go up significantly because this insurance company is going to say, hey, we have a contractor out there who is willingly and knowingly operating in a reckless manner. He has these marked in the yard that tell him there's a utility there somewhere, and he's digging anyway. And then he's sending us these bills to try to cover for him. So, maybe we don't cover them next year. Or if we do, we price that risk accordingly. It's not worth it, guys. It really isn't. That's my opinion. So we'll let me catch up on this. I get going on this because it's incredibly important. And I see this come up so often in the forums, and you see guys that, will dig with a teaspoon and you got to just hand dig, and all the utilities are 3 foot deep. They're not. Like, I understand a lot of them are supposed to be, but they're not, especially around here. So my guys, I've got a picture that from probably a year or two ago. My guys were digging on a yard and they had the orange telecommunication paint down it. And literally they had pulled back the sod and the line is under the sod. These guys didn't trench one bit. They just laid it and then laid the sod back over it, called it good, and went on with their day. And the guy's running a trenching machine. Is he supposed to be 3 foot deep? Sure. But maybe he hits a rock and rather than go around it, he brings it up to 24. Well, now all of a sudden, if you're digging a 30-inch hole, you're going to be right on top of that thing if you don't go through it. So anyway, like I say, it's not one guy's opinion. It's absolutely not worth it. And if the customer wants it built and doesn't want to sign a waiver, we're probably not a good fit for that customer. We're probably not a good fit for that project. Luckily enough, there are other fencing contractors in our area that will probably take on that project. So the customer's not going to not get a fence. That's not going to happen. They'll get a fence. We just won't be the ones building it because I'm not willing to assume that liability, that risk of paying, $3,000 to $10,000 to repair this line. It just doesn't make sense. All right. So let me go back up here. Comments got a little crazy there. All right, Fence King's checking in. What's up, Dan? He's been running an empire, Fence King. Yeah, so that was a neat picture. So Fence King put up in some forums of his woodlot. Like, Fence King's got some lumber going on down there, and he's securing his lumber because right now in some areas lumber is really hard to find. So good on you, Fence King. Yeah, so Mr. Fence, we use a waiver for easements. So for easements is a nice touch too, because we try to be as clear as possible. Well, one, you want to get a property surveyed. If there's not pins there, it's always good to get a survey anyway. And when that survey gets done, generally the surveyor lets you know, hey, you have an easement. It's a water runoff easement. Those are pretty common here, retention basin easement or utility easement. And here's exactly where it is. And if you put a fence in that easement, and that utility provider needs to take that fence down, they don't have to put it back. That's why they have that easement. They have the right to have the utilities there and the right to service those utilities ongoing. So it's a nice touch to have a waiver for easements as well. Yep. Dan, I'm pretty sure that's exactly where the question came from, because I saw like everyone kind of got involved with that on I think it was a Fence Professionals Facebook page. All right, Jacob says he's doing a bunch of dirt work around his shop that the previous dozer got hit an 8-inch low pressure line. Oh, and he didn't do a one call. So, he didn't have insurance and just left. That's one way. So the thing there is that owner could then sue that excavator. Just because at least in Missouri, it's state law that if you do any sort of and I forget what their threshold is, but like if there's any if there's any dirt exposure, if you dig or you scrape or whatever, a directional bore, you have to call. Like, it's state law. So the dozer guy broke, depending on the state, could have broken the law. But by not having insurance, depending on what state, that's probably illegal as well. Yeah, and then he just picked up and left. And if you can afford a dozer, you can't afford insurance. That's probably not a great order of operations there. Yeah, so I'm of this mind too. We have a duty to protect our team members. So, and this all falls back to, right, I'm not going to ask my team members to do something that I'm not willing to do. Yeah, that's only right. And so I'm not willing to bet my health and safety on digging around this line. That's not fair to my family, right? Let's think about that. Is that my family doesn't want me in around that risk, right? So they want me to come home. They want me to still be the breadwinner for them tomorrow. So it's not fair to my family for me to make that bet either. And if it's not fair for my family to make that bet, then it's not fair for my team members' families for me to make that bet on their behalf. And it goes on and on and on. And that's absolutely right. We have a duty to protect. All right. So it's good. Let me try to scroll back up here. I don't see the response here. So there might have been something I missed here with Dylan. All right. Hit a gas line in Seattle that was improperly located. City agreed and paid $2,000 to fix it. Yeah, so that's the thing too, is if you hit the utility and it's outside of that 2-foot zone, then you're not liable for the damages. Gas gets exciting. So when you report a gas line, you get all the emergency services, at least in our area. So the police show up and they lock down a certain radius of that street, and then they let the fire engines in. And then the fire engines are on site just in case that thing blows up, I suppose. And then we hit one as well. It wasn't marked at all. Is that what you had said? Yeah. So yours was improperly marked. Ours wasn't marked at all. And so we hit this gas line. It's the whole like, oh, do you smell eggs? Yep, we better call it in. They rolled fire. The police blocked the street. Of course, they asked us to leave. The police blocked the street. The fire engine shows up, and then an ambulance shows up. I mean, just to make sure everybody's okay, I suppose. And then the city utilities workers came and shut off the gas and did all that. But yeah, gas gets very exciting. But it's a good talking point in that if the damage does occur, you always document where it was in relation to the line. Here's the thing: is we're not perfect, even though we don't dig within that 2-foot zone without a waiver. Sometimes we do if it's teleco and all that, but in general, it's not within 2 feet. Sometimes we do still hit a line, and you bet your bottom dollar we grab a measuring tape and we measure where that line is, where the damage occurred, and we measure to the closest utility markings, and we take a picture from several different angles just to show, hey, this is outside of that 2-foot mark. We're not liable for the damages. So we leave it exposed so they can come fix it, and then we keep on fencing. Divine Fence. Noah with Divine Fence in Massachusetts. Welcome, Noah. Just want to say thank you, Joe, for referring me to Tony Thornton. Spoke to him yesterday. Great guy, and I'm now a proud member of the AFA. Welcome to the AFA. Noah, that's a huge step. It really is. And I'm not a spokesperson for him. I mean, we are a member, full transparency. Ozark Fence is a member of the AFA. But man, after spending some time with Tony, that guy is incredible. You guys got to sit and watch the interview. I think the first 2 parts are out right now. We've got a 3rd part coming, but the live interview is also in our live playlist. But anyway, so during that interview with Tony, that guy is just an amazing guy. He'll tell you everything he knows. He'll give you all the resources he can. He is just an amazing guy. So I'm glad to know that you got hooked up with Tony. Welcome to the AFA. Yeah, isn't that right? So yeah, the utilities are 3 foot deep until they aren't. And when you hit one, it's supposed to be 36 inches. Everyone's going to scratch their head and go, man, that's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. That's supposed to be 36 inches deep. Well, yeah, but it's not. It's about 30 inches deep, and I hit it. And I'm like, well, here's the marking, so you still get the bill. All right. Welcome, Mark. How are you, sir? So this is an interesting question. So this comment came up in the discussion this morning about using, I forget their term for it, but basically it's a hydro dig. So basically using water pressure and then a vacuum truck to suck up the slurry, to suck up the mud and rocks and all that. And that's an interesting thought. So we looked into that concept. I don't know, it's been several years ago. And you want to talk about some expensive equipment. That is some spendy stuff. Now they do have trucks that hire out to do that, but that's for like city municipalities. It's a spendy endeavor to try to hire one of those guys. Um, I've seen, so in my research, I was on YouTube of all places, and there's some guys. There's some guys using wet vacs for their suction and a power washer for their excavating force, and it worked. So I guess you could do it that way. But if I did it, I'd want to have, what we were looking at was not even a vacuum truck, but a vacuum trailer. But the logistics get a little crazy with that too, because then you have to have enough hose where if you leave this thing on the side of the street, on the roadside, and then you have enough hose to get all the way to the back, it gets a little bit cumbersome. But if I were to look into it, Mark, that would probably be the way to do it. Or if I build a pony wall out of 8 by 8 by 16 cinder block in my front yard, 3.5 foot tall, with proper footer and rebars, or any reason why I can't dry stack the block and fill with concrete. So, RL, I'm not a mason. I don't. I probably wouldn't be the correct professional to ask on this. But let me read it again. Pony wall, 8 by 8 by 16 cinder blocks, my front yard, 3.5 foot tall. So one thing you're going to want to do is check with your municipalities on that. So we're in Springfield, Missouri, so I'm most familiar with regulations, building regulations in Springfield. So on theirs, any wall or fence forward of the front corners of the house, it has to be 50% open. So like it's a picket fence essentially, or a chain link, or aluminum, ornamental iron, that sort of thing. You'd want to check on whether you can build the wall or not. I mean, a lot of municipalities don't have that, I suppose. So check with your local municipality. I can't speak to the rest of it. Proper footer and rebars, or any reason why I can't dry stack the block and fill with concrete, I don't know. To be completely honest and transparent, I have no idea. We don't build block walls, so I'm not the correct professional for that. But check with your municipality on if there's any building codes and regulations regarding structures in the front yard. Mike says setting 4x4 posts for, say, 100 foot of fence, and renting an auger worth the hassle, or should I suck it up with the old clamshell? Rent the auger. 100% rent the auger. Get all your work done before, do your layout, do all your markings and everything. That way, when you're ready, you hit the ground running. But absolutely, do all that work, get the holes ready to dig, have all your stuff ready to go rent the auger, bring it back, dig the holes. A lot of them will rent it by the hour. So if they rent it by the hour, dig your holes and take it back. Other places rent it by the day. You get a better deal if you rent it by the day. So, but on 100 foot, it wouldn't take an hour to dig those. So dig the holes, take it back to the rental shop, come back and dig and set those posts. But cover the holes. That way nobody falls, trips, breaks an ankle. But yeah, rent the machine. Absolutely. Mr. Fence uses company cam to archive those pictures with geo timestamps. Yeah, so absolutely. So we use company cam as well. We don't use it nearly as effectively as you guys do, as Mr. Fence does. If you guys get the chance, check out Mr. Fence's content. He runs a tight ship. Well, they all do. I don't want to say just he. They all run a tight ship. I was actually telling, so my sister runs a residential division. I was telling her the other day, I was like, we have to, and I told her, like, you need to go watch all of his content, because we have to get on board with, like, every truck. All the tools are documented. They're all inventoried. Every truck has an inventory sheet, has a corresponding picture in company cam with that truck's tools. It is incredible. Just the links at which they document things. And, here's a crazy thought. They're also wildly successful. So, there's a correlation here, right? Between documentation, crossing T's, dotting I's, getting waivers, getting releases, and being successful. I mean, can you make a bet that something's not going to happen? Sure. But what happens when that bet gets called? That's Mr. Fence has a lot of stuff figured out up there. No, it says, I like what Tony Thornton and the AFA are doing for the industry and very excited to be involved in it. He called me within minutes of an email. Yeah, Tony is on the ball. So just behind the scenes a little bit. So to set up that interview that I did with Tony, I sent him an email because I got with the Midwest chapter of the AFA, and I'm currently, I don't know if we're currently in the fiscal year or not, but I've been elected to the board of the Midwest AFA. So anyway, I was talking to some of the chapter members of that board. I said, hey, how do I get a hold of Tony? Like, I'm watching his content. He puts out tons of stuff. He's great on the camera. I need to interview him. Like, how do I get a hold of him? And everyone's like, oh, you just email him. Just email him and he will call you right back. Like, wow, okay. So send me emails, dear Mr. Thornton, my name is Joe Everest. I have this YouTube channel. I'd like to interview you if you have time available. Here's my information. Now, this is on my way home. So this is like 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. And 2 minutes later, I get a text. Hey, got your email. Can't call you right now. Can I call you in a few minutes? Yeah, sure. Absolutely. And sure enough, he did. It was by time we had this conversation, it was probably, I don't know, 8:15, 8:30 at night. We chatted for a while about, the YouTube channel and the industry as a whole and the direction we're going. Great guy, incredible guy. So no, I'm glad you got to interact with him. All right. Fence King says, we use a similar system, Mr. Fence. Upload before, after, and during pics of the project. Absolutely. Timestamps when it's uploaded. Has saved us more money and bad reviews than I can count. Absolutely. So Dan also had a picture. So we're all members of like 4 or 5 Facebook groups, I think. But on one of them, Dan uploaded a video, actually. Is a conversation between him and a client that the client had said that they had damaged a car when they were installing the fence somehow. And it was kind of a weird deal anyway, because if you saw the picture of this car, it was missing like a square of paint off the roof. So it's kind of curious, like how that damage would happen anyway. But he said, hey, you guys damaged my car. And so, of course, he said, well, I'll certainly look into that for you. Let me see and all that. Well, then what do you know? Dan's crew had taken pictures. They saw the damage. And so they were taking pictures with timestamps of that damage before the fence work went in. And the customer even asked for it. So Dan sent him a picture. Said, actually, so here's a picture of the damaged car that had occurred before we were building the fence. And so while there is damage, we're not debating that there's damage there. We weren't the ones that did it. And then the customer comes back with, well, do you have a timestamp on that? Sure do. Sends him back a picture of the timestamp. So, and then the customer, of course, is like, oh man, that's crazy. That must have happened just right before then, on and on and on. Never said sorry. That was kind of an interesting thing. Sorry for accusing. I think more of the story is, I think the wife had accused the guys while they were there of damaging the car. And anyway, no one ever said sorry. So that's interesting. But documenting everything, there's no one that's ever regretted having documentation, right? No one's ever said, man, I took way too many pictures and never had to use them. I had way too many contracts and never had to use them. No, but you do hear about guys that complain about not having the documentation. Boy, I wish I had that signed contract. I wish I had the change order. That's a big one. And in Dan's case, it could have been, I wish they'd taken that picture. I wish they'd taken a picture of the damage of that car, because now we got to, repair or repaint this thing. So absolutely. Let's pause for a second. And I want to say thank you to these guys. So, and I'm going to miss people, I'm sure. But specifically, guys like Sean, Mr. Fence, Dan Fence King, Dylan Fence Prince has been involved too. We've got a really great group of guys here that are putting out content that's really helping propel our industry forward. A lot of conversations, a lot of good conversations are going on in the Facebook groups, and I learned from it. So I want to say thank you to you guys. And I'm sure there's a lot of other folks out there that are learning from that content and propelling the industry as a whole forward. That's what we're all trying to do, right? We're trying to raise the sea, and a rising sea raises all boats is a saying I'm getting to. We're all trying to raise that sea up so it lifts us all up. All right. So Mark's getting back to the Hydro Dig. So it works for the 1-up holes. Okay. I'm not sure what 1-up holes. So, but it works and you can charge for it. Absolutely. So that's probably a good tool to have in your back pocket, is if you've got that one hole that's got to go, or maybe a series of holes and they got to go right there and they don't want to sign the waiver, then the alternative is that, hey, I've got this pump truck, this hydro dig truck, and they're not cheap. They cost X amount of dollars, but I can have them out here and they can excavate those holes for us. Definitely an option. RL, you're welcome. I apologize. I couldn't have been more help. So RL had asked about the cinder blocks, and wish it could have been more help for you, bud. Mark says, even with water, you must stay safe distance from the post. We had them come back on an installation 6 years later, and we never seen the wire, but they came after us. So that's interesting. So it sounds like Mark, they had used hydro dig to dig and excavate, but they damaged the line. The 6 years later is kind of crazy. They came back on an installation 6 years later. You didn't see the wire, but they came after us. Or they came after you. I tell you what, if it's been a week after we were done, I'm arguing that that's not us. Like I'm not debating that you have an outage at this neighbor's house, but that fence has been done for a week and we haven't heard anything. So 6 years, I have no shot. That was definitely somebody else. Yep, there's a reason that the saying is there's the devil's in the details. Absolutely. But by crossing T's and dotting the I's, you set yourself up for success. No, it says having a GPS track and work truck saves on claims as well. When we have a lot of times people can make them up, and having the documentation will save you. Absolutely. I'm so glad you brought this up. So we have the same thing. We have, what is it? So hold one, and I'm going to figure out which one we use for our trucks. I'm just going to open up Sam Sarah. Just had to open up a new window and see what the name of it was. Sam Sarah is what we use. So it's a GPS tracker in the trucks. It's also forward-facing camera and cab-facing camera. So we have pictures of everything going on in and around that truck while it's on. Not necessarily just while it's moving, but while that truck is on, it's recording forward in the cab and recording GPS location, including speed and all that. And this absolutely saved us money when somebody had called up into our office and said, one of your guys' trucks was driving down I-44 and chipped my windshield. So you need to pay me to replace it. So our standard answer is like, well, when were you on I-44? So we can try to see who was there. I mean, our standard is all the trucks get swept before they move. Before they even leave the gates or leave the customer's house, the trailer gets swept just for this exact thing. But okay, where were you? When were you there? That sort of thing. I-44, it was about, it happened an hour ago or something like that. Okay, all right, sure. So we start pulling up the trucks. Well, none of our trucks were even on that side of town that day. So I called back and said, hey, I just want to verify this with you. So it was an orange truck, because all of our trucks are orange. Orange truck, it said Ozark fence. Yeah, it absolutely did. It was going down I-44, and I was right in behind it, and it kicked a rock up, and it hit my windshield, and you owe me to replace this windshield. And he kept saying we owed him money. Not you need to fix the windshield. You owe me money. That's kind of a weird way to put it, but okay. But I said, sir, I'm looking at this, and we're not even on that side of town today. You sure it happened? Oh, well, it might have been, it might have been yesterday. No. So at this point, we're done with this conversation, because you said 2 or 3 times it was today, roughly an hour ago on I-44. My trucks aren't even on that side of town today. So you can try calling somebody else to fix your windshield or pay you to fix the windshield, but you won't call us. So Noah, absolutely great point. GPS tracking is huge. We like the videos too. I mean, we've never had to use them, thank God, but so you hear stories about, and I don't know the proper terms for it, but someone swoops in front of you and locks up their brakes and ends up getting you to rear end them. And then they have really bad pain in their neck and they need to be seen. And it turns into like this huge settlement. Well, that's the instance that I've got those cameras in there for, because I want 4K video. It's probably not 4K. It's probably 1080 or something, but I want video of exactly what happened. That I want in-cab video that shows my guys were not on the phone. They were not distracted. They're driving. They're paying attention. This guy swoops in front of them, locked up his brakes. My guy's, driving a 1-ton truck with a 20-foot trailer that probably has equipment and post and concrete on it. And yeah, this guy swooped in front of him, hit the brakes, and caused the accident himself. That's exactly why we want video on board as well as GPS. Okay, so Jacob says 1,500 a day for a hydrovac truck. So it's actually less than I thought it would be to hire out these big hydrovac trucks. I mean, still spendy if we're talking about a couple holes, but um, good to know that. Good to know, and I'm sure that varies. You know, depending on where in the country you are, where in the world you are. Interesting to know. I honestly thought it would have been more. Mr. Fence, agree on GPS trackers. We also have two-side video cameras that record and you can see live. I like that a lot. So, but also keep in mind, Mr. Fence's trucks are significantly bigger. Like, they're nice. So one of the videos I watched that you had put up, Mr. Fence had put up. So these trucks are so big, like they've got camera systems in the truck because they want to be able to see, like you said, live view of everything that's going around behind the truck and the blind spots and everything. These trucks are very nice. All right, so they use Samsara in Florida, but Links Up in Indiana. Links Up is live view. Okay, and you can listen. So that's interesting. I'll have to look into that. So Samsara is it's not live per se. You can ask for a video retrieval of a certain time. Well, our process is so you can't view it live. Our process is you can use the fast motion. Say, hey, I want to see where this truck, what is happening on these cameras between 3 and 3:15 today. And it'll give you a really, a 30, 45-second clip of that 15 minutes. And then you figure out exactly what minute you need. So I need minute 3:02 through 3:05. And then you can ask for retrieval of the video. It's cumbersome. So it's interesting. Links Up is live. That's definitely worth looking into. Good to know. All right. And with that, we were caught up. So that's a plus. If you guys have more questions, comments, drop them in the comments below. We'll certainly bring that up. While you guys are here, so Mr. Fence and Dan, if you're still Fence King and Fence Prince and if you guys are still here, Noah, also I'd like to get your opinion on this too. Get different perspectives. So one of the questions we had come in on the community post earlier was from Craig Hanley. I haven't seen Craig in here yet. So Craig, if you're here, say hello. I would like to hear you discuss the differences between pine and cedar. For example, why pine rails and cedar pickets opposed to all cedar or all pine. Why most caps are cedar and not pine. Density of the two, cedar being porous, pine being dense. Which holds nails and screws better. Mainly just the differences between the two and best uses for each. Interesting question. It's a great topic to discuss, cedar versus pine. Oh, all right. Jason, we'll see you. I want to catch you before you had to go. See you later. So that's a great discussion to have, guys, is pine versus cedar. We've offered pine in the past up until this pandemic. When the pandemic hit and the lumber shortages started and they started really messing with the price of treated pine. Right now, the price of number 2 treated pine is still somewhere 3 to 4 times greater than what number 1 was costing pre-pandemic or supply chain issues. So we opted to just not offer treated pine at all right now. Just for the price, it doesn't make sense for the quality that's being offered. I really think it's overpriced for what it is. And so just as Fence King had a point earlier that we have a duty, to protect our team members. I feel like we also have a duty to our clients and our potential clients to offer them the most value for the dollar. And for the money we would have to charge to install the treated pine that we have access to, which is typically number 2, I don't see the value in it. I think it's overpriced for what it is, and I wouldn't feel right selling that to a customer. So we don't offer treated pine. Right now, our offerings are Postmaster Steel posts, which there are alternatives, lifetime post, etc., and then cedar rails and cedar pickets. Now, prior to this, though, we had 3 offerings. We had a value, an improved value, and a lifetime value. Our value was the treated pine pickets, rails, and posts. The improved value was a cedar picket on treated rails and posts. the thinking there is, again, there is a value proposition of this is a nicer looking fence from the road. Now it does still use treated pine rails and posts, which we know are the post will be prone to rot no matter how well it's treated and how well it's set, what method you use to set and all that. It is still prone to rot because it is a wood post. The pine rails are more prone to warping and twisting, but it's a value. It's an improved value because we swapped the treated pine pickets for cedar pickets. And then the lifetime value was the cedar pickets, cedar rails on steel posts. We call it lifetime value because the Postmaster steel posts have a lifetime warranty. We use Alta Lumber cedar pickets, so they have a 15-year warranty. Granted, not a lifetime warranty, but a pretty significant warranty. And especially, if you can find any warranty on pickets, it's a pretty good deal. Much less 15-year warranty. So we called that our lifetime value, and that was our offering. I've seen some guys that are sticklers on keeping same species, pine, or cedar. That's fine. I think that's personal preference. I don't know that is, that's a hard, fast rule or anything like that. I think it's personal preference on what that particular contractor offers. But for me, our offerings were, like I said, all pine, cedar pickets on pine structure, or cedar materials on steel post. I felt like that was the three most common, combinations. Occasionally we would get asked to use steel post with pine pickets and rails. That didn't really make a lot of sense to me. By that point, at the time, cedar post was a pretty significant upgrade or steel post was a pretty significant upgrade from a pine post. I mean, twice the price or more. So at that point, it doesn't make much sense to then not upgrade the rails and pickets. If we're already investing in upgrading here, let's make it thorough and let's, just make the fence look great and also last forever. Not forever, a very long time. But that's kind of how we did it. I prefer cedar over pine any day. So cedar is going to be less likely to warp or twist just because the oils in cedar is what treated pine is trying to emulate, or the process that treated pine is trying to emulate. So treated pine is the treatment in treated pine is just preventing rot decay from moisture, which is what the cedar oils do naturally. So cedar being a natural product is going to be less prone to warping and twisting because also you can think of it like a sponge, right? In that it dries evenly. There's not the treatment in the board that's preventing the moisture from coming from one side of the board to the other. The reason a board was going to warp is it always pulls to the dry side. So that dry side is going to constrict when it dries, but the wet side is still pliable. So it's willing to let go a little bit, and it always pulls to the dry side because that post or picket or rail did not dry evenly. Typically they're going to warp and twist in our area to the south and to the west because that's where the sun sets. The sun sets typically in the south, it is south facing, and the afternoon heat is a very real thing. And so the west side gets all that heat and all the sun. The cedar products, whether it's a post, rail, or picket, naturally, it's like a sponge. Like I said, they can transfer that moisture out, so they're less likely to warp and twist. Less likely. We've seen it. It happens. You get a warped picket or a warped 2x4 post. It can happen. I'm not saying it doesn't ever happen, but it's far less likely than a treated pine product is to warp and twist. And for us, there's still not a great price difference between treated pine and cedar. Not enough for us to go back to offering all treated pine, cedar pickets on pine, or steel. Because right now we still can't get number one quality, and it's still number two. And the price of number two is still 3 or 4 times what we were paying for number one. From a value proposition, it just does not make sense. All right. What's up, Noah? So Noah says, I very much appreciate all of your content, Joe. I watch you and Mr. Finch, Sean, and Successful. Yeah. So Successful Contractor wasn't one that I said, if you guys like this type of content and the content that Sean, Mr. Finch is putting out, go follow Successful Contractor. Those guys are putting out really nice content. Mark and Luke. Have you done an interview with Mark and Luke? If not, you should, and with Sean. Absolutely 100%. So I put a post out maybe a month ago saying that I was going to be interviewing Tony and asking, like, who else should I talk to? Because I had an insurance agent on, our commercial insurance agent, And then I had Tony on, said, hey, who else should I talk to? And all those guys that you had mentioned were in the comments. Like, well, you got to talk to Mark and Luke, and you got to talk to Mr. Fence. I said, absolutely. So my plan is, I mean, I expect all these guys are probably going to Fence Tech. So that's kind of where I see the interview opportunities. And so as it gets closer, I'm going to reach out to everybody and just make sure everybody's going. But yeah, sit down and have a chat with do like some contractor talk interviews. Right. And, yeah, I think that's absolutely the plan. Noah, thank you for the suggestion. Fence King says we will not cap in Pine. I tell customers I can give you the number of fence companies that do, but they're building a checking account, not a business. Absolutely. Because, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but probably because that top cap is the most susceptible to warping, to pulling up. Just that top cap gets all the sun. And so, like I say, it tends to always warp and twist to the dry side. So a top cap, you got the top cap, but this top dries obviously faster than the bottom because the bottom's in shade, top is in the full sun. It's going to pull up. I mean, you can try to put a ton of screws into it, nails and whatever else, try to anchor that thing down, but it will move. Fence King's work. If you guys get a chance, go follow Fence King on Facebook. I follow a lot of his work. Those guys do some really nice craftsmanship. So you should follow him. It is really nice. No, it says we use cedar panels and rails with pressure treated pine post or cedar post or steel post. Okay. Yeah. So that's essentially, so it sounds like you use pre-made panels, which is fine. I'm not going to get into that debate. You see that debate a lot on Facebook if it's just like the nails and screws thing, right, guys, is that you get two sides of the issue. Well, do you use panels or do you stick build? And the guys that use panels say that it's incredibly efficient. And if you stick build, you're wasting money. And the guys that stick build said, no. If you use panels, you aren't able to use terrain and on and on. And each side saying, if you do it that way, you're wrong. Here's the thing, guys. Both sides of this situation have been doing it for years, probably generations, and it works for them. They wouldn't be doing it for this long if it didn't work for them. Now, so I have no qualms with using panels. If it's done right and it looks well, if it looks custom to the yard, fine. And I'll say this, when I was a kid, so back before the internet was a thing, before YouTube was a thing, and we could really share ideas and concepts, I had the same opinion because Lowe's in our area, and I'm sure Home Depot, Menards, they sell pre-made panels. And so that's what I had in my head as what pre-made panels were. 1x3, strips of wood for your rails, 1/2 inch or less pickets on these things. They look incredibly bad when you pick them up, and nothing ever gets better once you install it. That was my opinion. And so if you had asked me, 15, 20 years ago, my thoughts on it, I probably would have said something similar, that, you got to build it on site. So it's custom to the yard. We still build on site. We don't build with panels just because that's not how we've ever done it. But as we're growing, and as we're watching each other's content on YouTube, and I'm learning and I'm watching these Facebook groups, there's guys that are using these pre-made panels and it looks great. There's absolutely no loss of quality on this. And so my opinion has changed. My opinion is that if it looks custom to the yard and it's a quality fence, I don't care how it's built, whether it's panels, because the guys that are custom building these panels are using, quality 5/8 to 1 inch pickets. They're using 2x4 lumber. Like, they're using the same materials that we use to custom build, to stick build. They're just doing it in a controlled environment. So, maybe that's worth a thought. You know what I mean? I could see the benefit of making panels in controlled environments, so long as they can, slope to terrain and all that. Hey, anything's worth a look, I say. But anyway, yeah. So Noah, I appreciate you letting us know how you do it. So let me know this. Noah, let me know, do you build your own panels or do you buy them pre-made? There's a lot of guys. So here in the Midwest, it's typically stick builders. We don't see many guys use panels. But the guys I see do it are usually over East and West Coast. No, did you tell me? You did tell me where you're from. Let me scroll up here, see if I can't find that comment real quick. Massachusetts, so East Coast. So, yeah, so typically East Coast and West Coast is where you see the pre-made panels. I'd be interested to hear if you build your own, because I'd love to chat with you on what that process is like building your own panels. I mean, it's always worth the thought. So, okay. Ryan says, how long should I wait after using green fence materials before I stain? So pre-treated, wanting to use oil-based, great decision. Living in Nevada, pretty dry climate. Absolutely. So and if you ask 10 guys, you probably get 10 answers on this. My thinking is it's all moisture based, right? So pick up a moisture meter. They're $25, $30 on eBay. They probably sell them at Lowe's, Home Depot, Menards. Pick up a moisture meter. And when your moisture is below 15%, you're ready to stain. Like 15% is kind of the number I've always used. There's guys that use 12%, 13%. The less moisture, the better. 15 seems to be a number that works well for me. I would rather use data than just a generic rule of thumb time span. So I would rather use data in that moisture content. So when we're testing moisture, we're testing both sides of the picket. So the sunny side and the shaded side. We're testing the 2x4s, the top and the bottom, and the post, again, shaded and sunny. We're making sure no part of that's 15%. It's not an average. I see guys that do that take 6, 8, 10 measurements and then average them. And as long as the average is less than 15%, I don't prescribe to that. I would like to see it less than 15% on any part of that wood so that I know it's going to soak up that oil-based stain really well. And it's going to hold on to it. It's going to last. There's no water, no pockets of water under the rail, and not water, but really moist wood that aren't going to take that stain. And so then it's going to look lighter on the bottom than it does on the top, and it's not going to cover it as well. It's not going to, seal it as well either. So 15%, get yourself a moisture meter, $25, $30 online on Amazon is where we get ours. And check that percentage. Mr. Fence is going to be a fence tech. Awesome. So I'm going to reach out to you. We've talked privately before. I'll shoot you a message and we'll set up a contractor talk, because I think it would be great to get a hold of everybody and get us together for an interview. It says we do both build on site and pre-made panels, all top quality, #1 cedar. We are in Massachusetts. Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, that's interesting. So you build on site and you use pre-made panels. So I would almost think that the reason one to the other. So the reason you would use pre-made panels is if everything was nice and flat. Stick built was maybe if you had terrain. Interesting to hear. A follow-up question for me is what makes you choose one to the other? I'd like to hear that. #1 cedar is absolutely the way to go. #1 clear is going to be the best quality cedar you can expect in a fence. There's lumber, or there's furniture grade, and there's all this other. There are higher grades of cedar, absolutely. But when we're talking about fence, #1 clear is the quality of choice. I'm going to take a quick drink. This is not an endorsement. It's just where I ate today. I said that last week, and this isn't like I eat here all the time. This is just, it's a coincidence that I guess on Thursdays I happen to grab breakfast at this place. All right. Chris Zampline. Is that right? Zampline? Hope so. If not, I'm sorry, Chris. Is it beneficial to use cedar over pressure treated? Yeah. So that's exactly the conversation we're just having, is that cedar is a higher quality lumber. It's a better quality lumber than treated pine. So cedar oils are naturally going to resist rotten insects longer and more effectively than pressure treated. Pressure treated is trying to emulate the process that cedar oils do in repelling water and making sure that insect is not appealing to insects to chomp on it and to try to make it their home. So pressure treated, and especially as we're becoming more environmentally conscious, which we probably should, take care of this planet, because it's the only one you have, right? But as the EPA gets stricter on treatments, the treatments become less effective. You see this when we're trying to have a conversation with a potential client about using cedar, and they'll say, well, the fence in my yard is pine and it's been there for 40 years. That's fine with me. Like I'm fine with another 40 years. So, well, here's the problem is I can't go buy that lumber. I can go buy treated pine, but it won't be that treatment. And the treatment that we have access to now rots significantly faster than this fence, Mr. Customer. Where this fence, you got 40 years, 35 years out of it. Realistically speaking, a treated pine fence, you probably have 10, 15 years or less. So we've all replaced treated pine posts that have rotted in 4 or 5 years. Is it in a damp area? Probably. But even I've replaced some that have rotted 4 or 5 years, and they weren't in like a water that hold or an area that holds water. I mean, it might have been damp soil, but still 4 or 5 years is a little bit uncalled for, a little bit premature. But so I'm telling Mr. Customers, like, I can't go buy that lumber. So, but cedar is cedar. So cedar oil is cedar oil. And I'll say this. So my fence, so we ripped out the fence in my house because it was embarrassing, guys. So it was like my house was the last one. We didn't build the house, we just bought it. But when it was built, it was the last one of like the neighborhood or this part of the neighborhood that got built. So all the neighbors already had fences, but they each installed them at different times. So, some of them were 5.5-inch boards. Some of them were 7.5-inch boards. Let's see. 2 of them were 7.5. One of them was 6 and one was 5.5. Like it was 4 different kinds of boards. One section of my backyard is split with 2 neighbors. My back fence line is split with 2 neighbors. One of them was stained. One of them wasn't. It was a hodgepodge of fence. And whenever I had friends over, like new guests or whatever, I'd have to say like, all right, before we go into the backyard, I have to tell you, this is not my fence. I'm not proud of it, but it is what it is. Anyway, we ripped it out. So this year, finally, Mama Bear said enough is enough, and we're getting a new fence. So we got a new fence. And I use cedar. I use cedar pickets pre-stained. That way I didn't have to worry about my guys coming back out, staining it later on. Pre-stained cedar materials on pre-stained cedar rails, on steel post, done, end of story. Now I don't even have to worry about the fence. Every spring, my guys will come out. We'll clean it with a light algicide, rinse it off, call it good. Every 2 to 3 years, depending on how it looks, I'm going to have them back out. We're going to clean it. Then wait probably a week or so, wait for it to dry till it gets below that 15%. Then we're going to put a maintenance coat on it, and it's going to be fine. So because we use cedar materials, it's the whole saying. There's lots of sayings that we all use for fence, but one of them is you can pay now or you can pay more later. Like that is absolutely it. And the pay more later is either you can put this off, and I guarantee it will cost more later, especially right now where prices are going up, seems like weekly. Or you can use a lower quality material and you can pay to replace it, in 10 to 15 years or less. That's a joke I usually make with clients is that, listen, by putting in steel posts, I'm actively trying to put myself out of business. If we use steel posts, then there's no reason that I'll be back here in the next 20 to 30 years, providing an asteroid doesn't fall on this thing. There's no reason. The fence post failing is the number one cause of fence replacement in the United States, period. Is the fence is leaning, it's fallen, windstorm came through, etc. The fence failure is the number one reason for fence replacement. So by switching to steel posts only, we're effectively ensuring that we don't get no one is replacing this fence for the next 30, 35, 40 years. They offer a lifetime warranty, but there's always limits, right? These posts won't last into an eternity. But anyway, so bringing this all back around is it beneficial to use cedar over pressure treated pine? Absolutely. And I use it in my own fence. And I have access to, whatever we have access to here in the Midwest, so I was going to say I have access to whatever I want, but we don't have access to like Redwood. So it was a few months ago, I was out in Nashville for Stand Steel Experts had a Stand Steel University, a free training. I went out to participate in it to get some training and get current on the practices and methods and all that. But also I was there to also speak on marketing and basically the marketing topic for the guys and gals over there. But while I was there, I was talking to a guy that does fence out of LA or outside of LA. He does a lot of fence. He does roughly 20 times as much fence as we do in a revenue basis. Builds a lot of fence. Only Redwood. period. Redwood is all they do. And out there in his market, that's what everyone does. It's always ever Redwood. Would I love to build a fence out of Redwood? Yeah. But let's talk about how expensive that is. I mean, the truck alone to get it here, what was it? We got quotes for trucking. So this guy also mills Redwood, and he had said, well, let me send you some. Like, you pay for freight, I'll treat you right on the lumber, I'll send you some. Freight alone on this was going to be, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 just one way. And then you got to pay for the lumber. So it becomes to be a little bit too expensive, a little bit too quickly. So, but cedar's what we have, and it's what I love. Oh, okay. So I probably should have okay. So this makes a little bit, well, it's the same discussion though. So Chris followed up his questions. Is it beneficial to use cedar over pressure treated for gates? It's even more so for gates because cedar is going to be lighter than pressure treated pine for the most part. Maybe you find some denser cedar and some lighter treated pine, but on average, cedar is going to be lighter than pressure treated pine. So yeah, cedar would absolutely be. When we were installing pine, even pine post rails and pickets, all of our gates are always steel framed because I don't want to go back and adjust them. I want to be done with gates when we leave. And using steel posts and steel gate frames ensures that to a point. Now, you always have the customers that left the gate open, the wind blew it, slammed it shut or slammed it open. You have adjustments occasionally, but not like with wood frame. But even still, we would use cedar 2x4s on those gate frames to save on weight. Even if it was a treated pine, picket, rail, post, we still use steel frame gates and we use cedar rails. Ryan asked, do you have an opinion on gate swing in or swing out? I don't. We typically swing out because it looks more when we build the gates, it looks more as a part of that fence. If we swing them in, it insets it by 1.5 inches, 2 inches. It's probably small and petty. No one probably notices, but I notice. So we typically prefer to swing them out. And that's probably a regional thing is because when we're in these Facebook groups and we're talking to guys from all over the country, all over the world, really, you get some guys and gals that say, well, I only ever swing gates in. That's just the way it is to be done. And you're not to swing gates out. And they usually have good reasons, and that's fine. In our area, swing out is the preference because it looks like a seamless run of fence until you open that gate. You're going to see a little bit of hardware. I get it, but it looks like a straight line of fence. I prefer swing out, but we do swing in if the terrain or the layout calls for it. All right, Boo Boo. We'll see you later. Boo Boo saying bye bye. Always enjoy your convo. Holla. See ya, Boo Boo. Jacob asked, what size boards you prefer? And man, I'm living those hinges for the money you can't beat. He probably means loving those hinges. So Jacob, sounds like Jacob got hooked up with Forney Fence out of Texas, which is who we buy for him. I'm not affiliated, not sponsored, etc. But they sell those shark hinges, quality hinges. They're having supply issues. I mean, everybody is right now. Those hinges are hard to beat. They really, really are. What size boards you prefer? All right. What I prefer is a 7.5 inch wide board. Now, I don't use a 7.5 inch wide board. We use 5.5 because we can get 5.5 inch by the truckload reliably. We were using a 7.5 inch wide board. So we started out 10 years ago. We were able to get Eastern Red Cedar, which if you haven't seen Eastern Red Cedar, technically it's a juniper. It's not like traditionally, it's not a strict cedar. It's a juniper, but Eastern Red Cedar, beautiful. It goes up. So if you get it right after it's milled, it goes up purple. I mean, it's shocking to see at first, but then it goes to a really dark, rich brown, marbled with intense whites. So it looks crazy. It is unique. Every board is unique to the next. It is something you just have to see. That's where we started. Unfortunately, the mills can't keep up. They couldn't keep up with production 4 or 5 years ago. We had to stop. So at that time, we were taking a truckload every 3 weeks just to keep up with production. Unfortunately, we were getting trucks every 4 or 5 or 6 weeks. So effectively, they were skipping a delivery every so often. And that does not do great things for your production. So we told them, just stock us every 3 weeks, send us a truck, whether it's summer or winter, because that's what we needed in summer. So we figured if we stocked up every 3 weeks through the wintertime, we would build up an inventory so that we could chew through it during summer but we should be okay. We were not okay. we ended up having to put it off work, waiting for more pickets to come in, and then the delivery would skip a delivery, and so then we were even more delayed in production. It was a nightmare. So we switched to Incense Cedar is actually out of Northern California. The problem we had there was they split like crazy. I mean, we're used to, I don't know, 4 or 5%. I think right now we were hovering between 4 and 5% culls, whether it's knots or splits. Those are two of the things, or just a really rough looking board. We'll cull it out. 4.5% on average. The Incense Cedar, we were seeing something like 11 or 12% cull. And that becomes a problem because once we buy the boards, we own all of them. When you buy by the truckload, you don't get to send boards back. So we got to sit on these boards, and you sell them for craft boards, but you can never sell craft boards for, you can never sell them for what you buy them for. As a craft board, it doesn't make sense. So you end up losing money on these boards that you cull out. So we ended up switching back to Alta boards. They're 5.5 inch wide. I like them a lot. Now we can get into the discussion on true 6 inches versus 5.5. A lot of guys like to have that conversation. I can't show you quality difference for the money. 5.5 inch in terms of dollars per board foot is less expensive than a 6 inch. So if you can't tell me the difference in quality, but one board is less than the other in a per square foot basis, per board foot basis, we're going to go with the 5.5, and it's more readily available in our market. We can buy it by the truckload without much problem. The 6 inch, it gets a little bit harder to find. But anyway, dig ourselves out of that rabbit hole. I prefer the 5.5 inch wide boards. If I could get 7.5 inch, I would absolutely prefer those boards. How much did you charge yourself? I charged myself full price. And that sounds crazy, right? Well, Joe, you own the company. I do. But for so many things to work, you got to charge yourself, right? I still paid my guys. I still paid for equipment. We build the cost of our equipment into every foot of fence we build because we're having to maintain it. We'll eventually have to replace it. Hopefully that equipment doesn't go down, but if it does go down, we'll have to go rent equipment. So that's how we price out our equipment cost on a per foot basis. But anyway, we have costs associated with it. So if we did my fence for free, then it would only do it to the detriment of the company. And we can also have the conversation like, well, that's just circular logic because you own the company. I get it. It makes more sense to me, and it's cleaner for me to charge myself. And then no one has any discussions about, well, sure, you get a nice fence because you own the company. Yep, and I paid for it, just like you need to pay for yours. So anyway, we use jigs for the rails and then nail on the pickets or boards in the shop and get top quality pre-made panels from mills in Canada as well as build on site. So you kind of do all three ways then. If bad slopes or uneven terrain. Absolutely. So here in Missouri, like it's pretty much all terrain. This is a land of hills and valleys, and there's not a lot in between. So when you get further out, when you get probably an hour west of where I am in Southwest Missouri, it starts getting flat, especially in Oklahoma, up into Kansas, nice and flat. We don't have that luxury. But I say that, but I've seen guys use panels also in light terrain applications. But so you build panels on site in your shop. It sounds like we use jigs for the rails and nail on the pickets or boards in the shop. But then it sounds like you also buy top quality pre-made panels from mills in Canada. That's interesting. As well as build on site. So you got to do it all. So do you build the panels in your shop? Do you build them in your shop because you can't get panels in time, or like custom panels, maybe custom widths? Like if you have to make an adjustment on the post, I'd be interested when you make the decision to build them in shop versus order them in. Chris, you're welcome. I appreciate you tuning in. Jason says, Tennessee here. Welcome. What would you think about someone coming out to your location and doing like a week-long class or work with one of your crews to maybe see how a fence company runs? Yeah, so I've had that conversation before. We don't do that only because we're not really set up for it, right? And we would have to have a crew almost just dedicated to like training. because when we use 3-man crews, when you get a 3-man crew running, they don't want to stop and do explanations. And I don't want them to, only because, I view this as like racehorses, right? Racehorses just want to race. They don't want to do lessons. They don't want to have fun. They don't want to do gallops anywhere. They want to race. And with my production crews, it's a lot the same way. They want to build fence. And I think if we try to slow them down to do training, I mean, occasionally they'll have to train new guys. We have some crews that are better at training than others because some crews are just production focused. I don't have any dedicated crews that are dedicated to training. But an interesting thought. So this is not a plug, but I saw Mr. Fence is working on a training course, and I think it's still in production. So I'm not going to speak too much on it. I've just seen content. I don't have like insider information or anything. I've seen what he's been putting up on Facebook, just kind of what he talks about, but it sounds like he's putting together an online training course. So you might follow Mr. Fence and see what offerings he has. But yeah, so I've thought about it. I've been asked about that, about having guys come out and train with us, but it really doesn't make sense. I wouldn't even know how to put a dollar amount on it, only because it's like, how much is lost production worth? And it gets into a whole thing. So as of right now, we're not doing week-long training classes. Your top-notch boss man, looking forward to the next one. Peace. See ya, boo-boo. Have a good one. Do you tend to shy away from doing stuff for family or close friends? I built a pond and a big wraparound driveway for my cousin, and they argued the price, and I'm in the wonderful world of Oklahoma. Oh, you're my neighbor to the west. Oh, awesome. Yeah, so do I shy away from it? No. Do we offer significant discounts? No. I mean, that's probably one of the reasons I charged myself to build a fence too. So I could say that, be like, hey, listen, do I want to treat you right? Obviously I do, family first. I get it. But here's the thing is I've got a family too. And all my team members have families. I'm responsible for a lot of families. And would it be fair to them if I gave some of the families a discount, not other families? No. So, I mean, do we have a friends and family rate? Yeah, it's 5% off. That's part of our profit. I'll give back part of our profit. But in all honesty, that turns into like a friends and family, right? So if one of our team members has an aunt that needs a fence, they get the 5% off. Or if we have somebody's best friend needs a fence, 5% off. Friends and family. Is it more than 5%? No, because I paid full price for my fence. Starting and end with that is we have obligations. I have obligations I need to make with the utility company, with my mortgage holder, with our material providers. I can't go ask my material provider for a discount because I'm doing fence for some of my family or one of my buddies. It doesn't work like that. Now, is that an uncomfortable conversation? Yes, absolutely it is. But I have it right up front. Hey, Tim, I appreciate you having me out here to do the fence or give you a bid on the fence. I'd love to be able to do it. Here's my number. Oh, yeah? So so-and-so could do it cheaper? Well, first, if you're out there getting bids, how good of friends are we? Right? And so I saw this quote. I wish I could remember how it goes, but it's something like true friends don't ask for discounts, right? Or true friends care enough about you not to ask for a discount or something to that effect, right? Because when you follow that mentality through, it kind of makes sense. Like, listen, from the customer's point of view, me and you are really good friends, so I'd actually like to pay you less money to do the same thing. I think it's worth less money because you and I are friends. Yeah. No, if you follow that through, like you'd be like, hey, I want to take care of my buddy, so I'm paying you to build this thing for me or dig this thing for me or whatever it is. So do we shy away from it? No. I love doing work for my friends and family. I love to take care of them because they're members of my community and because they're special to me. But will I do it, at the peril of my close family or for my team members' family? No, not negotiable. We do it when we have the time, and like you had said, depending on the job and what it is, and I will tell you this, we have worst digging and we have rocks. All right, so So here's the problem: is sometimes the comments come in out of context because I've already moved on from subjects. So what was no? Oh, so the jigs, yeah. So I'd ask, yeah, when do you build them on a jig versus when do you order them in from Canada? So do it when you have the time, and depending on the job and what it's like. And I'll tell you this: we have done the worst digging. We have done it the worst digging. We have rocks. Yeah. So here's a funny thing I always say is everyone always thinks they have it the worst, right? And you see this a lot in Facebook groups. They'll say, well, you guys just wouldn't understand because XYZ. And then someone else is like, oh yeah, well, guess what? I've got it worse than you've got it because I've got more XYZ. Like everyone always thinks they have it worse. And I say this, I think I said this last week too. Is like, if you think that everyone is just so different and then no one has the same problems, like go to Fence Tech, walk down an aisle and be like, you know what? Everyone here has it so easy because I got rocks. And you will have I envision like Fence Tech coming to a halt, like everyone looks like, oh yeah, well, I got more rocks. I got bigger rocks. I got different rocks. I got heavier rocks. I got thicker rocks. Oh yeah, well, you guys are lucky to have rocks because I only have sand and it doesn't compact very well. And you guys are lucky to have rocks. I have it really tough because I don't have rocks. Everyone always thinks they have it the worst, right? And everyone thinks that their situation is so much different than everyone else's. When in reality, as fencing contractors, we all face more or less the same problems, right? We face the same hurdles. We have to get over the same hurdles. We have to avoid the same pitfalls on average. Now, are there state dependent legalities? Yes, I understand. California can't take 50% deposit, to my understanding. They are limited to 10% or X amount of dollars. Like they have different restrictions than we have. We take a 50% deposit. And you see that a lot in these Facebook groups too, right? Someone says, oh, what do you guys do for deposits? And, our comment is we take 50% down to get on the schedule, period. But then you get other guys like, well, that's illegal. No, it's not. It's perfectly legal where I live. No, is it illegal where you live? Sounds like it. You have to do things differently. So and so some guys I saw on, where was it? It was one of the fence Facebook groups. I'm pretty sure today. One guy said that he takes 10% down to get on the schedule, and then 40% the day they start, and then the last 50% the day they end. Which I think that's probably a little bit too much work as far as billing goes, because for residential fence projects, it should start and end in a week, right? So the way our schedule is we start projects on Monday, Tuesday, finish them on Thursdays and Fridays. Today's Thursday, so my guys are finishing up projects they set on Monday. It should all be done by the weekend, providing we don't get torrential downpours, etc., and onward. But so I would, in that system, I'd bill 10% to get on the schedule because he said we're 3 months out. Okay. But so then Monday we would have billed them 40%, and then today we would bill them the other 50%. That just, obviously invoices are emailed now, but in the days of when they were mailed, that invoice from Monday wouldn't even get to them by the time we're done. And typically I think our average turnaround time on getting paid is like 8 days from when we email an invoice to where either pay online or bring a check or mail a check, whatever. 8 days is on average our payment cycle. So our payment cycle isn't even long enough. Our installation cycle is about 4 days. It's half the payment cycle. So that gets kind of wonky. But anyway, everyone always has it differently, I think is where I was going with that. I had to say it from your videos. I'm going to be at FinSec. Excellent. And I'm definitely saying it. We all have the same problems. Yeah, that's the thing is I think once we realize we all face similar problems, like not the same, but similar, then we can all kind of put our heads together on how we solve those problems. Right. And I think the Facebook groups are doing a great job at that. There's daily discussions. The discussion that started off this video. So Fence King had a posting in a Facebook group with utility lines. And then Mr. Fence brought it up here, where we all have the similar things, right? We all deal with utility lines, and you'll see guys that, and they did in this comment as well, or in this comment string as well. They said, well, you should see it, I don't know that, I don't know if it was Nebraska. We're like, well, in Nebraska, all the houses have utility lines that run down the property line. So, You guys decided to move it. You're wrong. I get it. Like, I don't know that any one state, like all the utility lines run in the middle of the yard. Like, I think they pretty much all generally run close to a property line because people want to dig trees and people want to, you put flagpoles in the ground. Like, it makes sense not to put utilities in the middle of the yard. They got to go somewhere, right? You don't want aerial, utilities. You don't want them in the air. We've learned that. Having them dug is better, but so they're going to be somewhere. We all have similar problems, and if we can all help each other get through the problems, we'll all be better for it. We just have to stop and remember that we don't have it as bad. We don't have the worst. Everyone has it bad. We had a lady on a local Facebook page say you shouldn't have to put any money up front. She got a lot of interaction on the post. She caused us and a few others a lot of trouble over that. You see this everywhere. Right? And I tell you who does it a lot is like these online, these online sites. So I'm not going to call any of them out, but you guys know the ones that give consumer information that's not necessarily based on expert opinion. You see this a lot, right? Well, you should never, you should avoid getting ripped off by not putting down a deposit. Really? Like in our area, the ones that aren't taking deposits are the ones you got to worry about. Like that's the way they set themselves apart. For me, I need to keep my schedule consistent. I need to stay on schedule. And so, deposit makes that possible. Do I need the money right now to go buy your material? No, we've got it in inventory sitting on the lot, but that puts you some skin in the game to where when my guys show up on the set day, you're going to be ready for them to set. And you haven't gone out to find, two guys in a truck to build your fence and then say, oh yeah, I forgot they're cheaper. So I just had them do it. Sorry. Go reschedule your guys for the next couple of weeks. Cause I just threw a wrench into your plans. That's what deposits do for us. Now, I'll ask this. So Dan and Dylan, Fence King, Fence Prince, if you guys are still on here, they word theirs differently. Dan and I talked pretty extensively about this a while ago, and I can't remember exactly how they phrase it. It's not a security deposit. It's well, if you guys are on here, let me know what you do. We take 50% down. So we take 50% down, period, just to get on the schedule. Or this. So I just saw Jacob, I just saw your comment here, or the ad for financing. Yeah. So if we get secured financing, like through our finance, we use Hearth. So through Hearth, if it comes up approved financing and you're ready to go, that's fine, because Hearth actually funds the money up front. So you can give us a deposit with that. We used to use Green Sky for financing, and they wouldn't pay you until the job was done. Well, they would let you draw 15% ahead or something like that. But like I said, we're not taking deposits because we need funds now. We have most of the materials in inventory anyway, unless it's like a specialty order item. So if we had secured financing and we knew the money was there and ready for us when we were done, that's good. That's good enough for us to put you on the schedule. I just want to make sure, like I said, when my guys get there, that you're ready for them to build a fence. Now, there's other guys, this guy in California that, so is Ruben Borg Fence. When I was talking with them, they don't take a deposit. So California is weird about deposits. Like I said, there's something like 10% or X amount of dollars, whichever's lower or something like that. And so they're like, well, it doesn't even make sense for us to take a deposit. We're going to have them sign a contract, and then, that's good enough for us. If I was in that situation, and we might do something like that, I guess. But for us, we can take 50% deposit, we take it. And then it goes in basically a holding account, right? So we don't touch it. We don't pull it out until we're done with the job. Or, if the job takes specialty materials, we will take out of that account when we order those materials. But in most cases, the money just sits in the account until we build a project out, and then we transfer it into our main account. It's similar to an escrow without it being like a traditional escrow account. So that's how we do it. It says same here, 50% down with signed contract to put them on schedule. I mean, I feel like that's the standard, but I feel like that's the standard because a lot of guys do it. But there's guys that will then, because this comes up a lot in the Facebook groups of, well, what do you guys do for deposits? And some guys say, well, I take pride because I tell them I don't need the money. And so I don't take a deposit. And the guys that do take a deposit, they're just going to take their money and run. Whatever. Fine. That's okay. Like I said, there are more than one ways to perform each task, to get to each objective. There's never only one way to get to the objective. My way covers us. Now, if the customer calls and they say, hey, I need to I had some big life event and I need my money back. Okay, that's fine. Like, we're not going to fight them for it. We're not going to say, well, you gave me the money, so there's going to be a restocking fee of 43%. And so I'm going to give you 7% back. No, we'd send it back to them. That's fine. As long as we have enough notice, and that comes up twice a year, maybe. But the 50% down and signed contract just lets everybody know we're serious. If you have 3 or 4 companies that don't take deposits, I mean, what's to stop you from signing contracts with 3 or 4 guys and seeing which one gets there sooner? And then the other guys, I mean, they can try to take you to court, but it is what it is. Are they willing to pay for a lawyer to take you to court to try to collect on some money for services they didn't perform? Probably not. They're probably just going to move on, So anyway, I agree. 50% down. So we offer financing. Yeah, we offer financing through Hearth. Do you offer financing? I think Sean did or has. Is that worthwhile? I think so. I mean, it's just another way to help someone into a fence, right? Is to provide financing. So we provide financing through Hearth. We've done it 2 ways. We use Hearth right now. Before now, in the past, we use Green Sky. Green Sky is nice because it's dedicated funds. So when someone goes through the process and gets the funds, they're secure. They secure the funds, and then Green Sky releases those funds directly to us. So the consumer doesn't handle the funds at all. Now the consumer has to sign off on. They have to sign off on a lot of documents, so it's a bit cumbersome. And Green Sky was getting hard for our clients to work with just to get pre-qualified and try to get qualified. They'd have to. It got really cumbersome. We started getting quite a bit of negative feedback on the process. So then we switched to Hearth. Hearth is very easy. They give you, I think, 7 or 8 different lender choices to choose from. So it's really easy. The problem is Hearth sends the money directly to the clients. So there's nothing saying those clients have to do business with you, which, here's my thought, and you pay Hearth. As a contractor, I want to say, and it wasn't much. I want to say it was like $100 or $150 to get in their program or whatever. But I paid the money and I provided this service. But we had this happen. Actually, there's a guy I know. They got the funding and they ended up using that funding on an invisible fence, which we don't do invisible fence. He said, well, I appreciate it. And I appreciate you, security helping us with the financing. But the wife actually wants to go with invisible fence. So we're actually going to take the funds and use it on that. Well, okay. I'm glad I helped make that possible. So that's the downside to Hearth. Very easy to use, but it's also easy for your customers to take those funds to your competitors. Green Sky is dedicated funds to you, but they're very hard to use for your customers. I mean, there's others out there. There's other lenders obviously out there. We used local banks for a while. Local banks, but they got to be more expensive than the online banks, the Green Sky, the Hearth, etc. And it was no funds out of your pocket. You didn't have to pay to join. But it's kind of the same drawback as Hearth. It's the relationships between the bank and that client, and they can take those funds anywhere. Even if you helped set it up and you made the introductions and all that, they could very well take those funds to your competitor. So we do offer financing. We offer it to Hearth because my thinking is if the client wanted to take the funds to our competitor, they probably weren't a great client for us anyway, right? There's something there that just wasn't a good match, and that's absolutely acceptable. Jacob says we do 50% on fence for dirt work. We take 40% and then a $500 mobilization to all dozer, hoe, etc. Yeah. So, but I would almost bet, Jacob, that on the dirt projects, I bet it's a longer cycle, right? I bet so on fence if it's 4 days, I would bet on your dirt projects where you're mobilizing a dozer and hoe and all that. That's probably a month-long process or something. Maybe that's just me guessing at it. If you have a longer job cycle, like remodelers, right? So remodelers will take a design fee and then they'll take draws throughout the project. So we get a first draw for X dollars, when we start the project. Then every month we'll take a percentage draw, based on how much we have completed, because it's a longer cycle. It could be for a remodel, it could be 6 months or more. So that makes sense to take multiple draws. On fencing, I don't see it making sense to take multiple draws other than 50% down, 50% when we're done. That makes the most sense because, like I said, it's a 4-day cycle, and it takes you longer to get paid if you're trying to do a mobilization fee and a final fee when you're done. So yeah, I'm going to take another drink, guys. I think we had this problem last week. I think this office that we lease is really dry, which is probably good, but it really makes you thirsty. All right, I think we're through the questions we've got. So if you guys have any more questions, comments, etc., drop them in the comments below. For you guys that are just joining us, let us know where you're from. I always enjoy hearing where all my viewers are from and saying hey and shouting you out, letting everyone else know that we've got somebody from your neck of the woods. If you guys are new and you haven't subscribed, it would mean the world to us if you did hit subscribe and hit that notification bell, set the notifications to all. The subscribe tells YouTube that we're up to good stuff, that we're consistently making good content, and lets them know that people want to watch our content moving forward. The notification bell helps you. So when you the standard notifications are like you get notified once every 4 or 5 videos. If you set notifications to all, you'll just get a notification at the top right of your screen, when we have new content available, which is typically recorded content on Wednesdays, these live broadcasts on Thursdays, and then we do a Tuesday morning once a month for the crowd that would rather watch in the morning than in the evening. Anyway, not a bunch of notifications, but it lets you know when we're either live or have recorded video. It would mean a lot. So the reason I ask for that is when you go over to our analytics, let me pull these up real quick. So our analytics show on average, give me just a second, get into here. So they tell us on average, 10% of those folks that watch the video are subscribed. So 90% of the people that are watching our content right now aren't subscribed. 9 out of 10 haven't subscribed yet. So that sends signals to YouTube that says, well, some of the people like to watch this content ongoing. Some people just want to watch it now and then. And it would really help us out if more people told YouTube that they like to watch our content. So, yeah. All right. Yep. Yeah, you're welcome, Noah. So, Hearth, maybe let them know I sent you. I don't know. They might have an affiliate program. I honestly don't know. That's who we use, and I like them. Yeah. Yeah, and that's it. It's all about giving options, right? It's all about providing options to your customers and giving them another avenue, giving them another opportunity to have you build their fence. Was your boy doing a commercial for your company? Yeah. So what Brent's referring to is I had a post up on my personal page. I should put it up on the Facebook page, actually, the group page. Yesterday, so me and my dad and my son were invited to be a part of a commercial for a local restaurant. And I don't know how much of this we didn't sign on non-disclosures, I guess, but out of respect for them, I don't know how much we can really talk about. But yeah, so we were in a Father's Day commercial where it was like 3 generations. So their company is 3 generation, right? Their restaurant family is 3 generations. And so they were wanting to show a multi-generational family sitting down and having a nice meal at the restaurant. And I kid you not, this wasn't scripted. This is just, we love eating there. So when I pulled it, so I told Jackson where we're going. I said, hey, we're going here. He's like, oh, okay. But he's 3, right? So things don't register until we pulled in and he goes, oh, this is Mom's favorite. So, well, yeah, it is. So they all kind of got a good chuckle out of that, but no, so it's not for us. It's actually for a friend's restaurant, but I'll put it into Facebook. So follow me on Facebook. It's Facebook. Follow me on the public page. Let's talk about this. I have a public page and a private page because on the private page is where my close family stays, right? I have pictures of my kids when we're doing family stuff and all that. it's not fair to them to open our personal life up to the world. I don't think that's my opinion. Some people do it, and that's fine. I talked about it with we had a family discussion about it, and you usually have a family discussion pretty often about what's going on with the channel. And we all decided as a family that our personal life is personal, right? But I have a public page, and the public page is facebook.com/The Real Joe Everest. And it's the same picture as my YouTube. It's me wearing all my orange and all that. So it's easy to find. Facebook.com/The Real Joe Everest. And the reason why I want to talk about that, I had a guy, how'd this go? He sent me a friend request on the personal, and I sent him a message. I didn't know him, and we didn't have any mutual connections or anything like that. So I figured he came from like one of the videos or somewhere like that. So I sent him a message and I said, "Hey, so-and-so, you found my private personal page. I also have a public page here." And I gave him the address. And he took that as a personal insult that he wasn't good enough to be a part of my private page, I guess, or something like that. And I told him, I said, I'll be honest with you. I mean, I have very few work people on my personal page, on my private page. Most of them are over on this public page. So yeah. So if I do send you a message and I give you a link to my public page, it's nothing personal. It's just me keeping my private life private and trying to distinguish between the two. Jacob says, we built a 400 by 400 pond. That seems very large. And in the middle of it was around 14 foot deep. We had a dozer, 2 hose, and a scraper. We were on the project for about 9 days on that one, and we charged per mile on the scraper. That's incredible. So, and this just goes to show that when you're professional at something, like you're obviously more efficient. If you were to ask me, hey, could you dig a 400 by 400 pond that was 14 foot deep in the middle? I mean, maybe. We got a skid steer, I guess. Like we could give it a try, but it would not be done in 9 days and wouldn't be done to Jacob's quality, I am sure. That's crazy. Not crazy. It's just crazy in a good way that you can be that efficient. So, yeah, very good. And charged per mile on the scraper. So, I don't know a lot about heavy equipment. I'll be the first to say that. So, yeah, I don't really know what a scraper. So, is Jacob, are you calling it what you call a scraper? Is that what I might call a grater? To where I'm not going to explain this very well, like a road grader, right? So we see them, the counties here use them to regrade ditches. So they've got a single blade that sits in the middle of this thing on the grade, and then they can move it back and forth. They used to use them to clear roads, but they don't do that anymore. Yeah. This is a great discussion. When did you know you wanted to take over the family fence business? So, and actually, we've got a good amount of time for it. So here's the thing. So I'm the third generation. So before I owned the business, my dad owned the business. Before he owned the business, my granddad owned the business. My granddad actually started it with his brother-in-law. His brother-in-law had a steel foundry, and they made chain link. They could make chain link fittings and that sort of thing. So, and actually one of our competitors, and they're still a competitor here, they had started 2 years prior. So we're not the oldest fence company in South Missouri, but we are the oldest family owned and operated fence company. So they sold out a little while ago. Anyway, they owned a foundry. They started building fence. And apparently my granddad's brother-in-law said, well, hey, this competitor of mine that has a foundry, he also does fence. Hey, brother-in-law, why don't you start a fence company, or me and you start a fence company, and I'll do the foundry and you do the fence. And so they did that for a while. And then eventually my granddad's brother-in-law decided that it was not as much fun to do fence as it was to own a foundry. So he sold his portion of the fence company to my granddad. My granddad owned it solely. He owned it solely by himself until the mid-90s. At the time, we were all living, my mom and dad, and me and my siblings, we all lived in North Carolina. So my dad had a job with a not-for-profit out there called United Cerebral Palsy. And so we were back visiting one year, and he was to the point where they were wanting to bring some younger guys into his position. They were wanting to kind of bump him up in the company, in the not-for-profit. So he was going to either have to move to like Dallas, a suburb of Dallas, or a suburb of Washington, D.C. So Dallas was like their corporate headquarters, or their, that wouldn't be corporate if it's not for profit, but like their national headquarters. And Washington was going to be like their lobbying arm. And so he could go one way or the other. And they weren't really sure, so at this point I was probably 10 or 11. So I remember parts of this, but I don't remember the whole thing. But anyway, so neither one of those sounded like a great idea, though, to raise a young family. So I'm the oldest. I've got two younger sisters, which I think you guys have met Sarah, maybe my youngest sister. But anyway, so neither one of those areas are very great to raise a young family. And so we always came back to Missouri. All my extended family is from here in Missouri, specifically here in Springfield, with the exception of one uncle. But anyway, we were back for Christmas, and my granddad, we were all sitting at the table, and I don't know that it was a Christmas meal, but it was like one of the meals where all the family was there. And my granddad just said something to the effect of, well, I'm going to sell the fence company. I'm tired of doing it. I don't want to do it anymore. I'd like to sell it to one of you. I'm going to sell it. And that was it. Pass the gravy sort of thing. Yeah. And it was kind of perfect timing, because it was just before that my dad got the news that they were needing to promote him, and we weren't sure where we were going one way or the other. And then this happened. And so, we're very much like things happen for a reason type people. And so my dad decided that he'd like to come back and help with the fence company. And he had helped with the fence company when he was young too. So he was kind of coming back to it. So we moved back to Missouri, back to Springfield, and started doing fence. And so I was in middle school. So literally I was in fifth grade when we moved back. And so that my first two summers, I got to go play with my friends. And then summer of like seventh grade or something, woke up one morning. My dad woke me up, which is kind of weird, because usually he didn't wake. Usually he went to work. He woke me up early one morning. He said, "All right, get up. We're going to work." What? No, I said, "I'm going to go play with my friends." They, "Nope. Your friends will be here when you get back. We're going to go build fence. I got you some new work boots." "Oh, okay. Well, that's gracious of you. And some new work gloves." "Okay, good." And that's how I started fencing. So I started fencing probably at, I don't know, probably 13, 14 years old, something like that. And when I say started fencing, he took me to work, and then like I was cleaning up the lot, and I was helping the guys in the fabrication shop. So at that time, the fabrication shop, we didn't have a welder. So we used aluminum corners. So we used fitted corners for all of our gates. So I think I started picking up trash, and then I got promoted to sweeping the shop, keeping the shop clean, and then filling bolts. So, putting the nuts and bolts together and filling bolt buckets. And then eventually started cutting pipe and fitting pipe and on and so forth. So then I did that after the fabrication shop, then I went on to the installation crews. So at the time we had two separate crews. We had a set crew, and then we had a finish crew. It worked for us at the time. We don't do that now, but so I started on set crew. And then I started setting fence posts, which was not my favorite thing in the world to do. But at that time, so how old was I then? I was probably, I was 15. So I was saving up money for my first car. So I was 15. So for a 15-year-old boy, setting posts is great, though. I mean, you don't enjoy it, but it gets you into shape. And it gets you in the sun where you're getting a good tan, and you're getting into shape and all that. And then after that, so from the set crew, I went on to the finish crew, and I finished fence for a while. And then after the finish crew, I came into the office. So this would have put us right around graduation, thereabouts. Maybe first year in college, maybe I came in the office. I started doing sales a little bit. Then I quickly found out that college was not for me, and came to work full time. So I did sales and then a little bit of operations, and eventually, so we're getting there, Brian, I promise. So eventually I'm in the office. I'm helping sell fence. I'm doing some operations, helping with production, keeping production in line, keeping sales in line with production, all that. So then my dad came to me one day. He's like, "All right, well, here's what I want to do. I want to focus on commercial fence, and I want you to take the residential and the day-to-day operations and the retail sales off my plate." He said, "I just want to do commercial, and I want to grow that because I think we've got room to grow." So I said, "Okay." Well, that sounds like me owning the business and like me buying the business from you and you just running the commercial division. And any of you that have worked for family know how this conversation goes. It went no. What I said was I want you to do residential and day to day and retail, and I want to do commercial. And so that went kind of back and forth for a while until we kind of talked about my vision for the future and his vision for the future, and knowing that. So my granddad worked at the fence company after my dad bought it. Actually, he worked there after I bought it. He worked for us for a very long time and until probably I think up until about 6 months before he passed or so. It might have been less than that. Um, but anyway, my dad kind of made the point of I will not be working here, when I'm in my 90s. It's not going to happen. So we kind of said, okay, so we're going to need a runway here where we transition without a bunch of hiccups, so selling now will then kind of enable that, right? Will enable this to transition smoothly. You'll still be here, not always be here, obviously, but you'll still be here running the commercial division. So if I have problems, you can be there to help me through them. You'll offer guidance and all that. And so that's kind of how it came about. So we started having that conversation in 2015. It took a while to kind of iron out the details. What do you sell it for? How do you finance it? What do you just all the things you don't think about? I'd never bought a business before, so I didn't know what we were doing. And yeah, so we ironed all that out. So I bought it in January 1st of 2016. So Brian, that was a really long-winded answer, but yeah, to your question, when did you know you wanted to take over the family fence business? I think I knew it early on, honestly, because I knew my dad bought it. I knew my dad worked there as a kid. Then he went to college. After he graduated college, he moved off to start a career with United Cerebral Palsy. But yeah, but then he came back to it. And I thought, I think that looks really neat. And around me, I had friends that had multi-generational businesses. I've got a couple friends that have multi-generational businesses, and they were always talking about kind of the succession plan in their businesses and all that, what they were looking forward to. So I think I knew pretty early on that I wanted to do that. It's nice working with your family. Well, it's nice and it's not. It's not all roses, obviously, but you're working with people that you trust, right? That you know intimately, and you trust them. And so that's a pretty good game plan for buying a business that at throughout the company, you already know everybody. You already trust everyone. So my dad runs our commercial division. My sister runs our residential division, and I don't trust anyone more than I trust them, which is a pretty good setup. But yeah, so I guess I knew early on that was something I wanted to do. I didn't think it would come this quickly, honestly, because in the fencing industry, as a lot of you guys and gals know, the trend is to, for typically the father, sometimes the mother, to own the business, into their 70s, 80s, or 90s, and then sell the business to, their son, who is now 40, 50, 60, whatever it is. So, selling me the company in my, early 30s, mid 30s, was a bit of a trend setting thing for my dad. He kind of recognized that I had some good ideas and I had some good plans. And, this gives us a really long runway just to transition things, so, and I still have him there in the business to where if I have questions about some sort of aspect of the business, he's still there, rather than if we would have waited and, we tried to transition this thing in a year or within a year, the road probably would have been a lot more bumpy. So this gives us a long runway to head down. And so that when he's ready to completely step away, the company itself will be in really good shape. So Brian, great question. Thank you. I appreciate you letting me share that. Okay. So Jacob was asking about the scraper, or I was asking Jacob about the scraper, because I thought it was the thing with the blade under the machine. I don't know heavy equipment, guys. I thought it was the thing under the machine that then we use it to regrade ditches. But no, so it's a pull behind pan scraper. It's pulled behind a big farm tractor, or they have, okay. Yeah. So like a pull behind version of what I was talking about. is what my granddad had one on a tractor that he would use to grade his fields. So I'm guessing that's what that is. I should probably know more about that. My dad's done dirt work and ran equipment for 40 years. He taught me how to run stuff. Now he helps me on the dirt side, bidding. If I get stumped, he will say, "Hey, do this." Yeah. So that's the thing is it's so great to have that resource, right? It's so great to have that relationship and have that resource available so that when you do need help, you have someone there that you trust incredibly, with utmost trust, to try to help you handle the business. So, on your side, he helps you do the bidding. Now, having someone bid your work takes an immense amount of trust. I mean, they're selling your product, so you have to trust that they know what it should be sold for. Now, you could put together price books, and you could, you could try to make it as easy as possible. But for me, that's an area that would require an immense amount of trust. So, in our instance, my dad and my sister do the selling. So it's somebody that I trust a lot. So Jacob, I would say you're very fortunate. I'd say you're very fortunate to have someone like that you can lean on. It says, has the company always gone by the name Ozark? And how did the name come about? I grew up in fence with my father and siblings. I went through the same thing, being brought to jobs really young. Yeah. So, so the company's always been Ozark Fence. It has been since 1955. So we are in the Ozarks region, right? So, which there's always confusion in our area because there is an Ozark, Missouri, that is a suburb of Springfield, Missouri, which is where we operate out of. And so a lot of questions are like, well, what part of Ozark you guys in? Well, we're not actually in Ozark. We're in Springfield. Well, you're called Ozark Fence. Correct. We are in the Ozarks region, which covers like half of southern Missouri, or the southern half of Missouri, and a lot of Arkansas, and I mean it's a pretty wide ranging area, and as a result, there are several Ozark fences. And so here's where things get like a little tricky. Is so we have been trading under the name Ozark Fence since 1955, but we didn't incorporate that name until my dad bought the business in the 90s. So before that, we were unincorporated, but trading under the name Ozark Fence. Now we have old original fence placards, fence signs. We have some fairly old payroll records that are into the 60s that are from that say Ozark Fence and all that. So if we wanted to try to fight the fact, there's, like I said, there's I want to say there's at least two other Ozark fences in Missouri. So there's one that's roughly an hour away over in Joplin, and then there's another one that's a couple hours away over in kind of southeastern West Plains, southeastern Missouri, thereabouts. If we wanted to fight it, like, I guess we could, but we don't trade in either one of those places, right? We don't build fence in either. So occasionally we will build fence in Joplin, but it's never been a problem of people thinking that they are us, or vice versa. Same thing with West Plains. We don't build fence in West Plains. People don't think that the people building fence in West Plains are us. They do a good job as marketing themselves as their own individuals. So no bubbles, no troubles. There's also a few companies in Arkansas that trade under the name Ozark, but for us, it's a pride thing, right? So this is a company that my granddad helped found in 1955 under the name Ozark Fence. We're not going to change names unless something very significant happens. Now there's been others that try to come through with names similar to Ozark Fence. So this is a fun story. We had a guy that we trained. This was last summer, believe, or over the winter. We had trained him for a while, didn't pan out, which is, it can happen. But we gave him a lot of training. And so, the way we do things is the way we follow a process that we created. It's probably similar to other people's process. It's nothing unique or shattering, but it's just a process that we've created, and it works well, and it provides a predictable outcome. So we gave the guy the training. What we didn't know is, so he was taking pictures of work he was working on, but while working for us, and pictures of the equipment and of the truck. Well, then we ended up letting him go, just one reason or the other. And then he started trading. So then we thought he went away. That's fine. until we had a customer call us and said, it was not a customer of ours, but a disgruntled customer of his, and said, yeah, I just want to know when you're going to have your guy so-and-so come back and finish this fence. I said, well, so-and-so doesn't work for us. Hasn't worked for us for the last couple of months. Oh, yes, he does. He is, how did they put this? Basically that he was a franchise owner of our company or something, like he owned a franchise of Ozark Fence. And so the name was a Ozark Fence Company, like a Ozark Fence and a Ozark Fence Company. It wasn't even an Ozark Fence. It was, the grammar was bad. But anyway, a Ozark Fence Company. And so he sold it himself as a version of us, basically. And so we said, nope, not us, but we'd love to chat with him. You know, if you get, so we had to send him a cease and desist, and which obviously costs money. And we had to sue the Secretary of State because the Secretary of State did give him a business license with that name in our market. So he ends up right the day before the court date. He sends our lawyer the information. All right, I changed it. I dropped that name. I completely dropped it. Here's the recognition from the Secretary of State that it's disbanded or whatever the terminology is. Okay. Well, then, so now we knew like kind of he's up to this, right? So then, you know, I don't know, a week goes by and the lawyer looks him up. Well, I don't know anything goes on until the lawyer sends me an email. He's like, hey, so-and-so is up to this again. Here is his new name, which is Ozark's Best Fence Company, which is very similar to Ozark Fence Company. So we had to do the whole cease and desist letter, thing again. He ended up letting this one go to court, and then we got a judgment that says he cannot use Ozark Fence or any version of the name, et cetera, and onward. And we had to sue the Secretary of State to revoke the business name. So, so that's a fun story. That can happen. There are other Ozark fences, but we are the only one in our market. So, and we like to think, we're one of the best Ozark fences. So, we've always got, that's a really long answer to have we always gone by the name Ozark Fence. Absolutely. And the name came about because we are in the Ozarks region, of the Midwest. I grew up in a fence. So Noah sounds like he came up from a upbringing very similar. So it's funny that a lot of fence guys and gals have this thing in common. So in the interview with Tony, he says really the similar thing. Tony Thornton, the executive director of American Fence Association, he had the same thing where a buddy of his dad's pulled up and said, hey, Tony, jump in the truck. I already talked to your dad. We're going to go build some fence. I got you some gloves. And that was Tony's introduction into the fencing world. I think a lot of us share that similar story of when we're young, because listen, I got a son that's 3. So don't think I'm not thinking about that I've got a little boy getting ready to be, not getting ready to, but one day he will be of age to be a very good helper. And if there's one thing that fencing does for you, it teaches you how to earn an honest living. And the great thing about fence is you get to see what you've done, right? At the end of the day, you can take a step back and you can see what you've accomplished, whether it's in the fabrication shop, welding gate panels or animal panels or, anything like that, welding chain link panels, or wood gates or whatnot. Fabricating, you can step back at the end of the day and you can see, a nice, pretty stack of all the work you performed that day. Or if you're building fence, you can see all the posts you set the day or all the fence you finished that day. It's incredibly rewarding. Now, did I see the value of that at the time? No, I did not see it as nearly as valuable to be working in summertime on a set crew. It was not enjoyable. But yeah, so anyway, I think a lot of us have that in common for sure. All right, so Brian, you're welcome. I mean, here's the thing. I like telling stories. I appreciate you guys asking questions though, because here's the thing is, while I enjoy telling stories and I enjoy talking about our business and my family and our story about coming up into the business, I need prompting, right? Because I don't know who's heard what story, right? And I don't want to sit here and prattle on in stories about me. I want to give value, right? So I want to answer your guys' questions. I want to help you guys propel your business. But if me telling a story is interesting and it helps your business, then I am absolutely more than happy to tell it. I just need a little prompting. Darren Crosby, welcome. Best, most cost-effective way to build a double gate. The total length is 16 foot. So first question, Darren, if you're here with us, is what type of fence? So let's see. This question was asked about 6 minutes ago. So you're probably still here. So Darren, what type of fence? Chain link fence is obvious. Chain link, aluminum, ornamental. It's definitely doable. Wood fence, there becomes some issues. So first and foremost, what type of fence? I know the comments typically lag behind this, me talking to you guys. So I'll give it a couple minutes to let you guys catch that response and then comment back. Or if I don't see a response from you here in a little bit, I'll circle back around to it. I like this name. One Tough Cookie. I like it. I finished 215 foot of my wood fence back in October. Turned out beautiful. It's a pine picket fence from Lowe's. Will it be okay if I stain it sometime in March, or should I hurry up and stain it now? So here's the thing. So in regards to staining a treated pine fence, one thing we talked about earlier is that staining the fence is more about moisture than it is about elapsed time. Now, so see, you built in October, so it's a couple months old. I don't know. So it's really going to still fall in that area. So it depends like what part of the country you're in, what kind of climate you've had, in the last couple of months. Has it been rainy? Has it been warm? Has it been, et cetera and onward? The best advice I can give you is pick up a moisture meter. They're typically $25 or $30 on Amazon or Lowe's, Home Depot, Menards. I'm sure sells moisture meters. They have two prongs where you simply stick it into the wood and turn it on, and it'll tell you what percent moisture content that board has in it. So what we're shooting for is 15% or less. So it very well could be that if you test it, it's below 15%. Now, here's the thing with testing it. You need to test different areas of the fence. So, the sunny side of the picket and the shaded side of the picket, the top of the 2x4, the bottom of the 2x4, different parts on a post, and then sporadically throughout the fence. The front of the fence, the side of the fence, the back line of the fence. Make sure at no point in that fence is it above 15%. One point that trips some guys and gals up is they take the average. So they'll take 8, 10, 12 tests, and then they'll average them. And as long as the average is below 15, they'll stain. You need to make sure no part of that is below 15%, because if the average says you're below 15, but the high parts are underneath the rails, which is typically where the higher moisture content wood is, just because it doesn't get as much sun, it doesn't get the chance to evaporate. The stain isn't going to penetrate nearly as well. So I assume we're using oil-based stain. No matter what brand you use, I prefer a brand called Stainless Steel Experts. We're not sponsored. They're just a brand I use and really like. No matter what brand you're using, though, use an oil-based stain. But if that underside of that rail is still damp, if it still has a higher moisture content, that stain isn't going to be able to penetrate as well. And what you'll see visually is the underside of the rail, any parts of that fence that are still damp will be lighter than the rest of the fence, which is a good indication that they don't have as much of the sealant in them as well or either. So they won't be as well stained. So to answer your question, I don't know. The only way we're going to know is if you get a moisture meter and test that fence. It very well could be ready to go now, or it might need to wait till March. So get your moisture meter, test. I would say 15 to 20 parts of this fence, all around the outside, all around the inside, under the rails, the shaded side of the post. Try to figure out what part of this fence is going to be the wettest, which is typically the part that gets the least amount of sun in a day. So your northern exposure part of the fence, under the rails, inside of the post. So if you're let's see. Yeah, it's a pine picket. So it's probably wood post. So the area of the post that sits between the post and the picket. So there's usually like an 1.5 inch gap there where that 2x4 sits. Inside that post and inside that picket, those are typically going to be wet places. And then underneath that 2x4 is going to be a wet space. Test all of them. As long as they're below 15%, you're good to go. Where do you get the placards at? Yeah. So two answers. Where we get them from is promoter advertising. The website, let me type the website. Let me check the website real quick. Make sure. I believe it is go. Let me type promoter.com. Let me double check that. And then if that is it, I'll put it in the comments below. Yep, that's it. So we use promoter advertising. I will put them in the comments. Again, not a sponsor or anything. It's just somebody we use. Um, I also see guys when this question comes up in the Facebook groups. I also see guys a lot recommend May advertising. Um, we've used May in the past. They're really good at production. They're a high production outfit, so they're used to making tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of these signs. I like promoter advertising. Seems like they're a smaller shop, and I don't know how I came across them, honestly. They're local to us, but they got referred to me by someone else who had some signs made through them or something. Yeah, and they took a lot of time with us. They kind of drew out. They gave us a design, a drawing of what a digital drawing of how they saw it, how they thought they would see it, and then we kind of made some changes from an existing sign we had. Made a few revisions, a few changes, changed the color. The colors were a white sign with black lettering. A little bit boring. We changed it to a black sign with orange lettering. Go figure, right? So yeah, so they were good to work with us. We use them a lot. So we also use them for. We found out they do other promotion materials. So they did do these shirts. These shirts were sent to us by a company. They were sent to me, but they didn't promote. So I don't know them that well, so I won't really say who they were. But yeah, so I'm trying to find other. Oh, so that promoter advertising does our shirts. So like your typical, you got the if I can figure out how video works, standard on the front chest with our guys like pockets. They like to have pockets on the shirts. It drives me nuts, but the guys love them. And then of course like that on the back. Yeah, they do that. I'm trying to find other Ozark Fence stuff. It's pretty crazy. I don't have more Ozark Fence stuff in here, to be honest with you. They make pins. They make all of our stuff. Anyway, yeah, not a sponsor. I just use them a lot, and it works really well. Okay, so Darren, okay, this is the double gate question. 16-foot opening, 6-foot cedar. It's not going to be a swing gate. Can it be a swing gate? Yes. But the post will be substantial. It'll likely have a roller on the end of it. That's going to be a heavy gate. So 8-foot leaves that are 6 foot tall. I mean, think about it. These things are typically supported by 2 4x4s every, one 4x4 every 8 feet. But all it has to do is stand up. It doesn't have to move. Doesn't have to twist. That outside end. So your hinge side is obviously going to be supported, but that outside edge is unsupported. So you'll typically have to put like a wheel on it if it's a hard surface. Swinging gates that are that big always have problems. They will be something that you'll have to adjust pretty regularly and maintain, and they probably still won't work very well. You could use a slide gate. We've done those in the past. It's an incredibly custom thing that we use a welded frame, and then we'll pre-drill the pickets and use self-tapping screws on them. Does it look the best? No, but from when you step back, looks okay. The customer had their own design. They specified to do it that way. Fine. Yeah. So slide gate would probably be the way, just because you could do a 16-foot slide gate as long as you have, 17 and a half feet to slide that back into. You always want a little bit of a buffer. You want more fence than you have gate when you're sliding into it. That way you don't have entrapment. Even if it's an unautomated gate and you're running them by hand, I always worry about entrapment on gates, especially on slide gates. So you'd want at least, I would say 18 feet. That way you've got a 2-foot buffer to where when that gate is all the way open, you still have 2 foot before you get to the edge of that fence. So at least 18 feet. If you have that, I do it as a sliding gate. You can get into V-track gates. Those get a little bit pricier. There's a lot of ways to do a sliding gate, but I would probably do a sliding rolling gate, and then it'll have to be custom though. So you'll have to customize. The reason it'll have to be custom is those boards are going to take up space. So you'll have to bump out that back roller that rides on the rail. On a slide gate, you've got the 1 5/8" heavy rail. Then you've got a roller that rolls on that is bolted to the back of the gate that lets that gate slide on these rails. On the front of the gate, on the ground, you have a set of rollers. Now, if it's a hard pack, if it's asphalt or concrete, they can be solid rubber wheels. We like to use pneumatic, so air-filled. Think small version of a bicycle tire that's knobbier. We like to use those. Just they roll over things better. If there's a rock in the way, they do great on gravel or on grass. So yeah, sliding gate is going to be the way. If it's mine, I'm not. There's no way I'm going to try to do a swing gate. Tree 2x4s, 4x4s, all wood so far. Okay. Yeah. So you're definitely. I definitely still think slide gate. A 4x4 is absolutely not going to hold up an 8-foot leaf of a 16-foot double swing gate. All right, One Tough Cookie. So One Tough Cookie had the fence that we were talking about staining. Got built in October. So Pittsburgh, rainy. I'd wait to stain. Well, I would get the moisture meter, but likely it's not dry yet. Wait till you get the moisture meter and try it. So Ready Seal. Okay. You'll want to check that. I don't know that it's oil base. I've read about it. I haven't used it. So I think it's a water base. They might have an oil base. I'm not really sure. I would recommend an oil base. We did a video on oil base versus water base. If you haven't seen it, I recommend it. It's kind of a good understanding on one or the other. I prefer oil. Oil is going to repel water naturally. Water-based stains they're going to have additives if they're going to repel other water, right? So oil base is going to be the way. All right. So, all right, Jacob. Here's the thing: is when I'm going around, pre-pandemic, when I was going around the country doing like trainings, we do a social media training out in California, or just fence text them regardless of where they were. I mean, even when we travel, like personally, I like to wear a lot of orange just because like it's my personal thing and it makes people laugh. People that know me, I always know what part of the country someone's from when they ask me about the colors. So obviously you're Oklahoma, so you're asking me about OSU. If I'm in Texas, or if somebody's from Texas, they're asking me if I'm a Texas fan. Or there's who else is there? There's Auburn, that's orange. Clemson. Who else? Anyway, I can always get a pretty good feel for where folks are. I'm not a big college sports fan, but I know enough of the orange teams to know, like, when someone says, "Oh yeah, Clemson, huh?" Nope. This is Ozark fence orange. And then they don't know what I'm talking about. They're just really confused. Okay. But yeah, I always know where someone's from when they ask me about where I must be from so-and-so because I'm wearing that color. Always good for a chuckle. Guys, we are like at a 3-minute warning. So I like to cut this off around 5:30, just because I want to go home, play with my kiddos, and eat dinner before they gotta go to bed. Yeah, so we'll do last call for questions, comments. Of course, we do this every Thursday from 3 to 5:30 Central Standard Time. So if you don't get your question answered this time, how I come up with my questions for next week will be, I will go through the comments on this week's video, and then whatever ones I don't answer from this week's video, I'll answer next week. Of course, also on in the communities tab, I'll make a post early in the week saying, "Hey, we're going live this Thursday. If you can't make it, drop a comment." We answered 2 of those questions today. Yeah. So, or you can always send it to us. You send it on Facebook. Let me put our Facebook link up here. So it is facebook.com/, not vom, if I can type, .com/ the real Joe Everest. Is there actually several Joe Everest on Facebook, and only one of them's me. TheRealJoeEverest.com. That's our Facebook page. Coming to you right now. Yeah. So if you got questions, put them in the comments here. Leave them in the community tab when I make the post there. Put them on Facebook. Always like to interact with people there. Yeah. I'll take your questions no matter where they come from. So let's do this. Let's go into last week's live video. I'm going to reach into there real quick and see if there were any questions posed after I went live, or after I was done going live. Let's see. Comments. Okay, so Cindy had a great question. She asked this about a day after the video. So I'm having my fence installed now and want the smooth side facing my property since the rear is all woods. The right is the neighbor's house, which is a rental home. The landlord does little upkeep. Would it be inconsistent to have part smooth facing my property and the gate, which is facing the street, installed with a smooth side, I would assume facing out? Not at all. So that one came from Cindy Horton. So basically, she wants to know, hey, is it going to look weird if I make the back of my fence smooth side towards me, finish side towards me, even though the sides and the front returns to my house, they're all face out? I don't think so, and we do that a lot. Whether it's woods, we want to try to capture as much of that land as possible, or it's a neighbor's fence where we're wanting to put the new fence right up to theirs. For whatever reason, the neighbor doesn't want their fence to come down. We do that quite a lot, where the back line ends up being, finish side or smooth side faced in with the remainder faced out. I'll say this though too about that is, it's going to vary regionally, right? So I've said this before, where typically when we build a fence, our standard is to face the finish or the smooth side out away from the property. And you would be surprised at some of the comments in that video. There were some very heated comments about that. That was absolutely the wrong way to do it, and that was taking advantage of the customer in some way. And that the finish side, the smooth side, should always face in the property because they're the ones paying for it, and they should see the nice side. Absolutely. Like, I get where you're coming from. So I say that to say it could vary regionally, right? But typically we face the finish side out unless there's a reason, such as yours, with the fence backing up to woods or another fence, facing it inside. It happens a lot. I think it'd look absolutely fine. All right, let's see. No, you have a good night too. Yeah. So we come every week, right? So every Wednesday I have a recorded video. Every Thursday we come live, Thursday evening, and then once a month, the last Tuesday of the month, we do morning because there's some of those folks in the show. So we've got some folks that watch the channel over in Europe, and the mornings obviously work out. The morning time for us works out better for them. So, yeah. But you're very welcome. I appreciate you patiently waiting. Jacob says, well, thanks for chatting with us, Joe. It's been fun. See you next week. Have a good weekend. Stay safe. Guys, you too. Listen, I want to say thank you to you. You guys help make this fun for me, right? I enjoy being helpful. I enjoy helping others and trying to lift the general sea level of the fencing community up so it raises everybody's boats. But I couldn't do that without you guys. It would be really boring if I were to sit here for 2.5 hours and just rattle on with my own stories and my own thoughts and all that. You guys make this interesting, and you prompt me and you get some stories flowing, and I appreciate that. I want to say thank you to you guys. A lot of you guys stick around with us for quite a while. The average view time is fairly long for a live video, and I appreciate that. I appreciate you guys sticking around with us. But yeah, so guys, for now, I'm going to say goodbye. If you found this helpful, be sure to like this video to let YouTube know that this video was helpful or educational or entertaining, etc. Also, if you haven't done so yet, hit that subscribe button. It helps our channel a lot because it lets YouTube know that we're making good content consistently and that you guys want to see more of it. But for now, I'm Joe Everest, the fence expert, reminding you that good fences make good neighbors. Have a great evening and a great week.